across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. Fast approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk with a home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connection device, thank you so much indeed for joining me. As always, I'm here all the way until 1 o'clock, and surprisingly, we will be getting a PMQs. That wasn't what the Prime Minister had planned for or what we thought was happening. But after the, delay in proroguing Parliament yesterday, what with, the small matter of that vote on the Prime Minister's investigation into his probity, which he did manage to get out of, we do see PMQs today, so we're looking forward to that. We are going to discuss today Keir Starmer avoiding that ethics inquiry after basically forcing Labour MPs to back him. 15 usual suspects, to be fair, the John McDonnells and the like, voting for that ethics probe to go ahead after, really quite a stonking call from Kemi Baden, not the Tory leader, and indeed Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader as well, into whether he misled Parliament over the Mendelssohn scandal. I mean, he did. We all know he did. Do we even need the probe, you've got to ask? But lots of Labour MPs have accused the Prime Minister of making them complicit in the cover-up by voting down that attempt. Well, they make their choices, don't they? Also, interestingly, Keir Starmer has apparently offered Angela Rayner a return to the Cabinet, hoping this will get rid of an apparent attempt to head off a leadership coup. I mean, let's be honest, she couldn't be any worse than David Lammy as Deputy Prime Minister. Oh, no, she was Deputy Prime Minister. Well, we'll see about that. But also, crucially, we are going to start today with the special relationship, because Donald Trump has described the US-UK relationship as a friendship unlike any other on earth. And there's no doubt at all that the King's speeches, one to Congress yesterday afternoon and one at a big banquet at the White House, have gone down very well indeed. So my question to you today is, can King Charles save the special relationship with the United States? Maybe you think he can, maybe you think he can't, maybe you think, well, this is all fluff and pomp and circumstance, but actually, as has happened after the previous state visit by Trump to see the King here in the UK, actually, only a few months later, he was slagging off the Prime Minister. I mean, let's face it, we weren't really that bothered about him doing that, were we? But does the special relationship really exist? Or as the current UK ambassador to the US, these guys cannot keep their mouths shut, can they? Christian Turner has said that actually the only real special relationship the US has is actually with Israel. I would love to hear your thoughts. Maybe you think there's no such thing as a special relationship and it's all basically, down to geopolitics and economic needs and the like on the day, or even personalities. Let me know what you think and tell us why you think it, crucially. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs one standard network rate message. But if you also want to get in touch about that vote in Parliament last night, about the Prime Minister escaping that probe, what you think of Labour MPs, what you think of the prospect of, Keir Starmer staggering on. I mean, realistically, that doesn't change things, that vote last night. But also possibility of Angela Rayner coming back into the Cabinet. Would that be something you'd welcome? And do you think it'd make a difference to any possible future leadership challenges after the May the 7th election trouncing that the polls are predicting? Any and all of that, have your say. Love to hear your thoughts. Delighted to say we're going to hear the thoughts right now of Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor, who joins us. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, you love your politics. You work for the Deputy Speaker in the House of Commons. You love this stuff. So you get an extra PMQs, yippity-doo-dah.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister won't be happy about that. I mean, the man takes 4 hours to prep to ask someone for a cup of tea, so goodness knows. But let's talk about someone who definitely did his job very well yesterday. Look, you know me, I'm a grumpy old Republican, not a monarchist, but I think, and I've always said about the late Queen, she did a job. I was not such a big fan of the King. He did a stonking job yesterday. He'd come in, they looked the part, they did all the stuff, the red carpet, the full pomp and circumstance. Americans love that stuff. Look, he's not Kate, he's not Diana. Let's be honest, that's what the Americans are obsessed with. But there's no doubt at all, he went down a storming Congress, a 20-minute speech, 4 minutes standing ovation when he walked in, and the speech was supposed to be 20 minutes but took 35 because there were so many breaks for applause, standing ovation at the end. He made a lot. I mean, of course, these speeches are partly written by the government, aren't they? I mean, this is a political speech. And then a really amusing speech, perfectly tuned speech at this state banquet. How do you think he's done?
I think he's done brilliantly. I really, really do. The tone is right. The way he's dealing with President Trump is right. He's gone there with an affection for the states, which is what the American people want to see. They want to see their country being loved by others. And I think he's gone there with quite a serious message, but couched in very careful terms.
Yeah.
He talks about the countries having more in common, to steal a phrase, and that kind of relationship that they have is very important, harks on back to history. And I think it's really important to have it cemented back into the 1700s to 2026. The King is saying, look, we're here, we appreciate you, please be appreciative of us. It was a very sort of, I think, sort of a collegiate effort.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's very interesting that King Charles, in some of the things he was saying, he said he's referring to his grandfather, King George VI. But he also said, today we find ourselves in a new era, but those values remain. He talked about the cooperation between the UK and the US in the Second World War. It is an era that is in many ways more volatile and more dangerous than the world to which my late mother spoke in this chamber in 1991. The challenges we face are too great for any one nation to bear alone. I mean, he did do his bit of his eco-nonsense, because you cannot get him away from that. I mean, he didn't talk to some plants and things, but he also talked about the need to stand firm against, for Ukraine. He didn't mention Russia, but for Ukraine, and talked about NATO. I mean, an awful lot of the key things. There were a lot of keynotes there, and it's interesting that he got rounds of applause from everybody for that, across the political divide. And as we say, one of the things we really did like was from the dinner last night, when the King joked about, there's been this thing about, if it wasn't for us, Americans, if it wasn't for the Americans, we'd be speaking German. And he said, well, if it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking French, which was a great line and went down an absolute storm. He also presented Donald Trump. They do these gifts, don't they? Yeah. With a bell from the HMS Trump submarine fought in the Battle of the Pacific during the Second World War. I mean, clever gift, well done. It'll probably be in the Oval Office, but here's the thing. You're giving a gift which is from a submarine where fighting men in the Second World War fought for their country, to a man who dodged the draft 3 times for Vietnam. Yeah. Now again, I think most of us will try and dodge the draft for Vietnam, because it was just basically a killing field. But I'm just saying, does that make a difference, or is that all just load of nonsense? Look, Christian Turner, the current UK ambassador to the US, audio from a conversation he had with a bunch of school children back in February gets released yesterday. Basically, I mean, again, what is wrong with these people? I mean, what is wrong with them? Saying basically, someone released it. Well, yeah, but if you hadn't said it, it couldn't be released, could it? That there wasn't really a special relationship. The only real special relationship was between the US and Israel. May well be a fair point. But also that the Prime Minister's future was touch and go. Again, fair point. But all these things. And there isn't really such a thing as a special relationship. What do you make of that? Do you think he's wrong? Do you think there is one?
I think the special relationship is something that is made up to be something more than it is. That I think that the two nations have a lot in common. There's a lot of common ground, democracy with culture and things like that, divided obviously by a common language, because the Americans don't speak it properly.
They can't spell.
They can't spell. It's really irritating. But I think with the ambassador, why say these things when you know that somebody's going to pick it up? If you're going to have that conversation with your close friends, fine.
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. But you don't say that. There's off the record and off the record. But if you're not off the record, if you're having a meeting with a bunch of school children, you're representing the UK. Shut the hell up. Yeah. What is wrong? Can we find one person in the diplomatic corps who's not a complete idiot who can't do his job?
Do you know what? You send me. I can be guaranteed that I would do that better than they do.
But my thing's like, I've got a gob as big as the moon, and I don't say things you're not allowed to say in the wrong place. I mean, you just don't.
Exactly.
You just don't. Can I read, before we move on, because I just think this is something quite extraordinary. This is what Donald Trump had to say yesterday in his speech as he formally received the King at the White House at various different events. This, I think, genuinely, this is absolutely beautiful. I've got to be honest with you, I don't like Trump's speaking style. He probably doesn't like mine either. But when you read the words, this is beautiful, and this is why we need to be proud of ourselves, right? This is why we need to understand the significance of Britain. Listen to this. Long before Americans had a nation or a constitution, we first had a culture, a character and a creed. Before we ever proclaimed our independence, Americans carried within us the rarest of gifts, moral courage, and it came from a small but mighty kingdom from across the sea. For nearly 2 centuries before the Revolution, this land was settled and forged by men, women who bore in their souls the blood and noble spirit of the British. Here on a wild and untamed continent, they set loose the ancient English love of liberty and Great Britain's distinctive sense of glory, destiny and pride. And that's what it is. Glory, destiny and pride. Come on, people. Did that not give you goosebumps? Did that not give you goosebumps? That is, I mean, OK, I don't think Donald Trump speaks like that without a teleprompter, but that is true. We forget, you know, when you look at America's, oh, we're the greatest country on earth. I mean, the mightiest, the biggest economy, your biggest defence, security and military. But you know what? A lot of your values, a lot of the things that you've got come from us. And they weren't just like out of the blue. There's a reason why that we had this very successful empire. It's the reason why a load of people who raised it, apparently our terrible, awful empire, want to come and live here. Yeah. You know, there's reasons for all this stuff because we have greatness behind us. I'm still an optimist. I still feel we have greatness ahead of us.
Oh, of course we do. I don't think you can ever do your own country down, and I think that good times will come again. We just have to all stick together.
We need to make them happen. They don't just happen out of the blue. And nothing that we've got in this country, none of the values we've got came out of the blue. People fought for them, and this is what we need to do. So let's stop all this morose, oh God, we've got an awful government, everything's going to be awful. Yeah. It's not. We have to make a change. That's one of the things about Americans, for all their faults, and they're all there sort of sitting there and they're their little fat buggies, at Disneyland. I mean, there is still a view that their country is great and that the work and that things are getting better. You've got to hold on to that, and you need to make it happen. Anyway, that's the lesson for the day. One other thing I want to mention is there's been a big fuss about the fact that Donald Trump reported a private conversation with the King. He said, King Charles agrees that Iran should never have a nuclear weapon. I love the whole, he said, he agrees even more than me, even more than I do, which is just weird. We'll never let that opponent have a nuclear weapon. A lot of people make a fuss about that, but I mean, that is official government policy as well. I think we're all agreed. Yeah. Iran is how you go about stopping them having a nuclear weapon, and I'm pretty sure that that most of us would accept that, I don't think it's going to happen by asking nicey.
No, I mean, I appreciate the King does not insert himself into political type conversations, but to be fair, Donald Trump could have said an awful lot worse.
I mean,
if I was going off the cuff, this was as good as we could hope for.
If the British government and indeed the Buckingham Palace staff, phew. I mean, they're going to New York today. They're going to be, laying a wreath for the 9/11. I have to say, if you've been to New York when you haven't been to the 9/11 memorial, this is most extraordinary. Everybody comes out of that. I mean, we came out. It was just sort of everyone comes out in silence. Even me. Jenny, you're just so shell shocked by it. You just come out in absolute silence. It's sort of when you kind of come, and you walk away, and then there's sort of, where's the nearest pub? I think we might need to go and have a stiff drink. Let's also talk about Donald Trump. He's put out a post early hours this morning. Basically, it's an AI image of Donald Trump, sunglasses with an assault rifle. No more Mr. Nice Guy is the image. I hope we can put it up for those who are watching on YouTube. Iran can't get their act together, he's written. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon, signed the president. No more Mr. Nice Guy. We've got these ongoing talks that aren't really happening. Do you think that we are getting to the end game on that?
I think we are. What is almost the funniest thing out of the whole set of AI images, you've got Trump putting his AI images out, you've got parts of the Iranian continent doing their AI videos. Yeah. And it's been this sort of war. This is not what we haven't seen this before when it comes to conflict. Normally, you have very, sort of serious talks in.
Oh no, but Hamas. I mean, they've watched what Hamas have done. Well, Hamas won the PR war with their absolute outright lies, which was sucked up by all of the Western media.
This is it. But I think people are more attuned to it now. They know that there are going to be untruths put in front of them. Yeah, no, I do think they are. I think a lot more people. You will always get those who will believe absolutely anything that comes out of these people's mouths, but we can disregard those wrong people. Yeah, and the majority of us will look at it. But I think the talks will come to something. It's neither side wants to look like they're backing down first.
No, but I don't think we can back down. I really don't.
No,
I'm sorry. I'm with you. We're going to have to take some economic pain. And by the way, it's going to be painful. It really is. But it's so would a nuclear war in the Middle East be painful for us? So pick and choose, people. Pick and choose. Has he gone about it the right way? Not necessarily. Who knows? But anyway, let's come back to British politics. You would have been in the Commons yesterday because you love this stuff. We had not only these extraordinary hearings with Philip Barton, the former, among the former bosses of the Foreign Office, rather unprepossessing chap, I have to say. But basically, he denied a few of the things, accusations that that Morgan McSweeney had sworn at him, saying just effing approve Mandelson's vetting for the ambassador job. But basically, he backed up pretty much everything that Ollie Robbins had said, who took on the role from him and then was sacked for not telling the Prime Minister that he hadn't passed his vetting. He and also we've seen evidence from the former head of vetting at the Foreign Office. They're all basically saying the same thing. Now, unless they're all lying, I'm not sure what their interests are in lying. Basically saying, no, actually, he had been red flagged. No one knew it apart from, it turns out, this head of security, that he'd been red flagged and that he shouldn't get the job. But the key thing is, everyone's pointing out, Downing Street were always going to appoint Mandelson. The due diligence report, which we know the Prime Minister saw, and Morgan McSweeney, his former Chief of Staff, who gave evidence for a few hours after Philip Barton, he definitely saw that report, and yes, he read it. He always reads his documents, so he did read it. Or they didn't read that Island of Strangers speech, he claims. But who knows? But basically, the line is, it was the Prime Minister's decision, and he was aware of an awful lot. Morgan McSweeney's evidence, I mean, bizarre. I basically, his evidence in the summary was, I didn't realise that someone who was a known and serial liar, who'd been sacked from office for lying previously before, and who was obsessed with money and power, would lie to me to get a job involve money and power. I mean, that's basically his defence, which I thought was a bit pitiful, to be honest with you. How much damage do you think was done to the Prime Minister from that evidence? And is he out of the woods now? He's passed that probe, that sleaze probe, the vote. He basically whipped MPs and forced them to vote. Almost all of them did. And he's now not going to face that parliamentary probe.
There was no real damage landed from the Select Committee. I think all it did was give us small pieces of information that we perhaps hadn't known.
Confirmed some other stuff.
Yeah, confirmed some other stuff. There wasn't a sort of smoking gun that you thought, yeah, absolutely, this is you bang to rights. The civil servants did their job.
I think it shows abject incompetence on all of their parts. I'm shocked by how poor everyone has been.
But that is the bit that gets highlighted to you, because a lot of people will never have come across civil servants, senior or otherwise, before, and now you see them in the flesh and you just go, these people are the ones running the country.
They're literally running the country.
It's quite frightening. Morgan McSweeney, I thought, was probably the dullest man I'd heard speak in a Select Committee for some time.
I think that would have been very deliberate policy.
Absolutely. Go in there and be as dull as you can. But you can think, you were Keir Starmer's right-hand man, so I get that. Yeah. I understand.
It's never sworn, apparently. Never sworn.
If people are worried about some bad language, they ought to not come into my office. Our language is worse than that. But the vote yesterday was just... It was a piece of theatre. Was
it a foregone conclusion? Once there was the three-line whip, which basically means if you don't vote with the government or with your party leader, you will lose the whip. Although we haven't heard of those 5 MPs, 15 MPs, like the McDonalds and others, who didn't vote with the government. We haven't heard about them losing the whip.
No, that was the Socialist coalition group who voted against. And do you know what? I don't think anything will happen to them. I don't think the Prime Minister can use up any more political capital than he's already done.
And making them victims. There were 50-odd MPs and Labour benches who didn't, who abstained. Some of those will be people, they've already got a day off, or they match them with other MPs. There'll be ministers on foreign trips, etc., etc. But there were clearly a number who just went, I'm not voting for this. What do you make of the claim that, the lot of them are saying, you've made us complicit in your cover-up, and this is a cover-up? Or do you think, actually, at the end of the day, look, there was a long debate in Parliament. I've got to be honest, there wasn't after we did the first two people on both sides speak, no one's saying anything new. It's a way, I believe it. In my view, it's a waste of parliamentary time at that point. Just have the vote. You've either decided whether you think the Prime Minister has lied or not, and he has. There's no, I don't think there's anyone who honestly thinks the Prime Minister's told the truth throughout this affair. I think lying to Parliament is a serious matter, and I think he should be held to account for it. Is there genuinely a view, though? He's a dead man walking. Everyone knows there's going to be a challenge after the May elections, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah,
that's precisely the feeling that you get walking around a place and talking to people. It was just another notch, another crack in Keir Starmer's sort of armour of prime ministerial responsibility. They're looking at the man now just going, do you know what, we've gone out for you so many times, you've done this to us that many times.
They're furious,
we'll give you this, but that's it, and we're now going to work in the sidelines.
Keir Starmer is very much, he reminds me of that. Is it the knight in that the battle in the Life of Brian, the flesh wound, and he's basically, he's the knight, and he's had an arm cut off and another arm cut off and both legs cut off, and he's like, no, and he carries on fighting. It's like totally delusional that he's for the corner. Is the possibility of offering Angela Rayner a job back in cabinet, is that going to save him from a challenge? Because there's a lot of talk that Angie Rayner believes that she's going to be, she's a number two, a power maker rather than necessarily the leader. A lot of people might go, well, we love our Ange. Do they seriously think that she's, someone who could win an election for the majority of the British people? I mean, come on, let's be realistic about her. Lots of talk that she's going to be, from what I can gather, doing a deal with HMRC by the end of this week, so that would clear the path for her to come back into office. I don't see why that does clear the path, because I think that if you are the housing secretary, as she was as part of her remit, and you bring in a law to put up stamp duty for second homeowners, and you buy a second home and don't pay that full stamp duty, I'm pretty sure you shouldn't be in public office. But I'm old-fashioned.
Shocking, isn't it? So you just expect people to abide by the rules. I mean, how awful.
You crazy lady, you. Was that going to save him?
No, it's not going to save him, and I do think it's a distraction. They're just putting the name Angela Rayner out there to see what people say, because then that gets the attention away from somebody else who is the actual chosen one to come afterwards. I mean, it's a game to play. It's not a smart game. It's not new. They'll sort of fly these flags, see what the reaction is, give people something to feed over ahead of the prorogation of Parliament, because they want the attention to be away from PMQs today. So let's just give them something else.
Oh no, we'll give attention. We'll take it live. We'll see how it goes. But I mean, again, Keir Starmer won't have had his week to prepare, because he's been busy dealing with all the other stuff, hasn't he? Let's also, before we go to break, I want to talk about, again, these things. Matt Goodwin, friend of the show, is pointing out, this sort of, these stats that get put out, by civil servants, Office for National Statistics, that the UK population is going to peak more than 40 years earlier than previously thought. They've calculated the number of people living in the country will hit a high of 72.5 million in 2054. Then it will begin to fall because, of course, of falling birth rates. Previously, it'd been estimated we wouldn't peak until 2096. Now, why is that? Oh, because there are going to be an extra 2.2 million more migrants arriving in the UK in the next 8 years. Everyone says they're going to get on top of all this. These are the legal ones, by the way. So basically an extra 250,000. That's your best case scenario. After having, 900,000, 700,000. In fact, actually, that's net figures. Gross figures, you're looking at 1.1, 1.2 million coming in some years in the peak Boris wave. The governments are now going to claim, we've got it down to 250,000. I'm old enough to remember 2010, and getting net immigration
tens of thousands
down to tens of thousands, under 100,000, never been achieved. And every single time a government's been elected with that pledge, it has gone up and up and up, and it's only going down a bit now. Because they've basically the national outcry about it. But again, the key thing is the people who are coming are largely unskilled, on low-waged people doing jobs which, frankly, an awful lot of our unemployed should be doing. And they are bringing dependents. Most of the people who are coming are not working. They are the wives often of the workers. They've not got a job themselves. They are the children of, and we're paying to educate them and paying for their NHS care and everything. The vast majority of these people are not net tax contributors. Same as most Brits. Same as most Brits. Unless you're earning over like 40, 45k, you are not a net contributor, even when you're earning, even apart from the 30 years you're on a pension. But these people are coming over. People go over there doing vital jobs. No, well, they're doing vital jobs that could be done by Brits. And they're using up housing, they're using up school places and the hospitals and GPs and places on the train and places on the bus and parking spaces. And I'm afraid their net contribution is not worth it for the average person in this country. We don't benefit from what they do. The company that employs them on low wages, they benefit, but we don't, especially when we end up subsidising their housing. I mean, these numbers are still obscene, and we never signed up to it.
No, we didn't. But I think we also need to look at how we treat the people that we have in this country, born and bred in this country, if we want to use that phrase, because we're not encouraging young people to stay here. The majority of teenagers, young 20s, looking to go overseas because it's much better for them financially, and looking at housing and things like
but just
that.
Opportunities.
Absolutely.
Quality of life.
Completely different from here. They're looking, my son is one of those who is now looking at universities overseas because he doesn't want to be here in that much debt. And he said, but I'm never going to be able to get a house. What am I going to do with it? Which is really sad. Yeah. But then the other side of it is that we have more people dying than being born, because we're not encouraging family life to be anything other than really expensive,
I know
painful.
So many people like us, we've only got one child.
Exactly.
Who would, again, and it's just not possible for a lot of women, to incomes and costs, housing, to start trying to have a baby until mid-30s, at which point you're probably only going to have one. I mean, I'm going to say my next project has got to be, pronatalism, but not from that Christian perspective, like women back in the home having babies. But no, we need people to have babies. This idea that we should import a load of people, no, this stat absolutely terrifies me. Something like 90% plus of women at 30 say they would like to have a baby, and only 50% of those women will have a baby. That's a whole load of people. By the way, we haven't got anyone to take care of them in, if they're sick or if they're old age. There's a lot of people who are going to be really, I'm sorry, I've got lots of friends who've chosen not to have children. They don't want them. That's absolutely fine. But most people I know did want kids and consider having their child to be like the greatest thing they've ever, achieved in their life, and the greatest pleasure they get in their life. And it's hands down the best thing I've ever done in my life. And I just think there's going to be so much sadness and loneliness in the future, and extra costs for the state, because people won't have family members to help them and care for them, and we are setting ourselves up for a disaster. And the answer to that is not importing half of Pakistan. No,
you did right, but that's the consequence of these actions, and you can see why the people coming from overseas, if our own population is declining. Yeah, naturally, that's going to happen.
Love to hear your thoughts on all the topics we've talked about. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. In particular, love to know your thoughts on the King. Can he repair that special relationship between the UK and the US? Do you think that even exists at all? And is Keir Starmer out of the woods after that, winning that vote on the parliamentary probe into him being a big, fat, barefaced liar, which is what he is? Feel free to sue me at any time, Prime Minister. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for X's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:32 is the time. Let's go to one quick call on actually the population conversation. Claire Pearson I've just had. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Kevin is in Dorset. Hello, Kevin. What do you want to say?
Well, really, we've been sold this lie, if you like, that bringing migrants will increase our economy and GDP. It won't. What we need to do in this country is increase productivity. That is what drives the economy. And without increasing our productivity and measures to do that, we're on a loser. Bringing in unqualified, unskilled people, all it is a complete drain. It's the complete opposite. So unless they come up with some ideas for increasing productivity, I've got a view. No,
you're quite right. And they reckon one of the reasons why we've had virtually, stagnant productivity, I mean, public sector are absolutely flatlining, is because there's not been the push to sort of, mechanise, to improve things, because, we'll just import another few 100,000 people who can work on low wages. And we've just allowed business to do that, which, by the way, we subsidise because we're paying the extra universal credit and the extra benefits and their housing benefit. And all. We end up subsidising the low wages.
So, without a change in government policy, but I mean, for example, I don't even understand. In 1 minute, the government's talking about AI and technology helping to improve productivity, yet we've still got drivers on the tube. We've still got train drivers. The DLR has been running without train drivers for I don't know how many, 30 years? So, those jobs need to be going into something that is more productive, and we need, if this government believes in technology and improving productivity, then let's see you doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Short answer there, Kevin. They don't really. Anyway, Kevin, thank you very much. Kevin's in Dorset. A lot of you messaging and texting in. Quite interesting lines of conversation on this about the King and whether or not King Charles has saved a special relationship with the United States. Annabelle says the UK has done nothing for the US since the end of World War II, except use, manipulate, weaken and lead the US to the brink of destruction. I think you might think it's maybe the other way round. I think the other way. Annabelle might have got that wrong. Brendan says no. He himself is a champion of Islamic takeover. Another caller messenger making that point as well. There's been a lot of concern over the fact that he talks to himself as not the defender of the faith, but the defender of faiths, and welcoming other faiths. I mean, I don't particularly worry about those particular concerns, but there we are. Ruth says there never was a special relationship, just Thatcher and Reagan who got on well. Since Blair, the UK has been a poodle to the US. Ryan says no, this is just glitz and glamour for show. Once complete, things will be back to normal. You can't blame the US for that. And Paul says only the far right would wish to build a relationship with a monster like Trump. I love the fact that they'll refer to Trump as a monster, and probably, let's be honest, Netanyahu as well, another elected leader. But, not that bothered about the mullahs of Tehran or Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or all the other leaders around the world who are basically massacring their own people. But, you carry on, Paul, because you got your little virtual signal in, and I bet your little flags in your bio are keeping you happy at night. But you're, frankly, wasting everyone's time. Really, they are. By the way, just some breaking news, and I'll ask my next guest about this after a break, but Nigel Farage has just done an interview with The Telegraph, and the Reform QA leader has revealed he was the victim of a firebombing attack at his home. Police investigated. There are no suspects been identified so far. But, we remember, of course, he'd been attacked with milkshakes and the like. But this was a petrol bomb attack on his home at the start of 2025. But he's also revealed that back in 2024, when he decided to return to British politics, a front line ahead of that general election, and that was quite a moment. He got a gift from Thai-born British billionaire Christopher Harborn. of £5 million, basically a gift just for his security for the rest of his life, because he needs security forever. And as he points out, he's tried and failed many times in the past to get the Home Office to fund security for him, but they refuse to do so. Extraordinary. We'll get the response of Baroness Kate Hoey about that up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:39 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest. Baroness Kate Hoey is an independent peer and former Labour MP and joins us to discuss all things political. A very good morning to you, Baroness.
Good morning, Julia.
Kate, okay, let's go informal. What am I like? Can I just ask you, before we go on to other topics, just the revelation from Nigel Farage that his home was firebombed. This was early last year, and interestingly, this was just before, actually, just weeks before the attacks on the two homes owned by the Prime Minister and his car. And of course, that case is at the listed the Old Bailey this week. 3 men have pleaded not guilty, and other charges also involved. But he felt he was the victim of a firebombing attack. He didn't make it public, he said, because he feared it would mean he would have to ramp up his security even more. He said that he's had a car written off. It was attacked by protesters. He's had pints of beer thrown over him. And in other words, it's not been public, it's not been filmed, so he hasn't actually publicised it. But he had to get basically millions in funding, private funding from a donor to basically keep himself safe and secure, and do it privately, because the Home Office won't provide funding for him. And we know people have been convicted of throwing milkshakes over him. Thank God they were milkshakes and not acid or something worse. What do you make of his revelation?
Well, I think it's probably quite right that he has actually said what has happened, because I had heard various rumours and some people knew things. But we've known for a very long time that he is a target for, not just people who are prepared to actually be physically violent, but people who just want to smear and be outrageously. You almost have to compare him in a way, although not politically, with the way Trump has been treated.
Just thinking that. Yeah.
You know, the way his name almost, with some people, actually makes them kind of go into a rage. And I thought it was very interesting with the Trump speech, ironically, where he talked about where he mentioned after he'd been attacked recently in that attempt to shoot him, perhaps, the gun went off anyway.
The shooter he's been charged with attempted assassination.
I hadn't picked that up. Yes, yeah. So he then said, it's interesting that those who want to do things and change things are much more likely to be attacked than the people who just want to talk.
Yeah. Well, I think the comparison is fair, apart from the fact that, look, and I'm in no way justifying any of the assassination attempts on Donald Trump, but he is also that some of Trump's rhetoric, violent rhetoric about journalists. I mean, I don't think he's brought it on himself in terms of attacks, but when he calls for people to be more careful with their language. I mean, he hasn't got a leg to stand on there. However, I've known Nigel Farage many years, and people can agree or disagree with anything he has to say or what he said in the past or whatever. But he has never, ever, he's the politest man you'll meet. He's never urged violence. He's never talked about his enemies in that way. I've certainly.
In fact, sometimes, Julia, I think he's almost too forgiving. But you're absolutely right. And during the Brexit campaign, where he was also subject to a lot of attacks physically and as well, he had his own private security, and he paid for it himself.
Oh, I mean, if you have lunch with him, you're very limited about where you can go. There need to be 2 exits. And there's security, and he's had to do that for years. I think it's an absolute outrage that the Home Office does not pay. He's a publicly elected official, and it's because of his democratically expressed political views that he is unsafe. I think, and again, from people who, by the way, all call themselves the Be Kind Brigade, the Nice Brigade, that he is under physical risk and possible risk of death. Is that unacceptable?
Also, there are so many people still in politics who are not in positions of any kind of power or influence who are still getting protection. Yeah. I mean, we just look at even someone like Tony Blair, who had his house in London with 2 police officers standing outside it for years. I'm not sure it's still happening.
I'm pretty sure he still needs that after the Iraq War.
He might, but there are others, and I'm not going to name names, who we know are getting more protection and perhaps they need. I think it is something that really should be looked at in the Home Office. Well, of course, if he becomes Prime Minister, he will not have to pay any more for his.
But it's a genuine issue, isn't it? Look, let's talk about the current Prime Minister. It still is Keir Starmer. He did survive that vote in Parliament yesterday, and the general view is that the evidence from the former Foreign Office Chief Sir Philip Barton and Morgan McSweeney, his former Chief of Staff, there was no sort of killer knife in the back from either of them in terms of the evidence over the Mandelson vetting scandal, which is a national security scandal. He survived that vote into whether there should be a probe into whether he's lied to Parliament. I don't think anyone's under any illusion that he didn't lie to Parliament. It's just whether this is the timing now. Does that mean he lives to fight another day, or is he now just a dead man walking?
Well, I think from, again, talking to many Labour MPs yesterday who did vote against the motion reluctantly, and because they were whipped, and it shows that very few of them have real independent thought on something like this. And it was.
When you were a Labour MP, would you have said now?
Absolutely, and I did on things, and so did many others. But also there were a very large number of abstentions. Now some were genuine, but a lot of people could find a very good excuse for not being there. No, his days are numbered. There's no doubt about that. It's a question of when. And I don't think this idea that bringing back Angela Rayner, which is being suggested. I mean, that certainly won't happen until after the local elections, when presumably there will have been a huge massacre almost of Labour across the country. Then there's going to, Labour MPs are really going to have to make a decision. Are they then going to stumble on with a reshuffle, with a few bits and pieces changing, bringing back Angela Rayner, who may not want to come back, frankly. I mean, why would she?
You're better off being out of a failing government. But I mean, sacking Rachel Reeves seems like a good plan to me. I mean, you say you couldn't get much worse. Oh, hello, Ed Miliband. I didn't see you in the corner.
Yes, I would go for Ed Miliband right away, and then you could completely change the whole policies on net zero, which is costing huge amounts of money. But no, I think there is a shift generally that people know he cannot stay, and it's just a question of who's going to replace him, and that is the big problem. But I think over the next couple of weeks, when Parliament's not sitting, there'll be a lot of secret meetings, not so secret meetings, discussions, lunches.
Everyone popping round Andy Burnham's for dinner. I mean, who hasn't done that? Well, again, whether the Prime Minister survives or not, I just want to ask you also just about the King's visit, this 4-day States visit, day 3 today. But so far, great success, certainly in Congress State banquet. Chumminess between him and the President. Lots of warm words on both sides. A question I'm asking our audience today: can the King save and rescue the special relationship between the UK and the US?
Well, I don't really think there's an awful lot that would ever break the very strong relationship between our two countries. You know, we share that history, which I think Trump went through in a very good speech, actually, for him, probably one of his best, about the history of how the two countries came about, how America came about. And I just can't see that ever breaking down, because we share so much. Obviously, relations between different presidents and prime ministers will change. I think what the public do realise that what the King said, Starmer had obviously had to approve.
Yeah.
So that's why
these are political speeches. Yeah. Anything the King says on a state visit is
he
approved
is
by
speaking
number
on behalf
10.
of the government.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't understand why they sort of fuss about what he said about what Trump said about him saying about, you know, nuclear weapons, because that is the government policy.
Iran not getting you. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing questionable there. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much for giving us your thoughts, Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer and former Labour MP. Claire Pearsall, do you want to come back in on Nigel Farage in particular there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that security of prominent MPs needs to be looked at, and it has. I mean, we've had this problem for a long time, and he shouldn't have to fund his own security detail
outrageous.
when he's put there to do a job. I think that's. I admire him for talking about it now.
Yeah,
he doesn't make a big
hasn't.
fuss about it.
No, but that's to keep himself safe.
Absolutely.
I know a number of people who speak out on things and you have to have panic buttons in their homes.
So
unacceptable. Unacceptable that this happens in our world. And again, a lot of people who are going after him are like lefty lunatics. You know, this sort of lefty, but they think they're the nice people. But again, you know, if you've got government leaders, if you've got people, you know, calling him far right and calling him a fascist or calling him a Nazi, which he's none of those things. I mean, that's not a party political, but he's just none of those things. Never said anything, you know, in his public life as an adult that would suggest that. I mean, I don't know what happened in the school days, and you know, but I don't think what someone says when they're 15 is relevant necessary to what they are in their 60s. But if you use words like that, why are you surprised when people think that it's acceptable to threaten violence against these people? Anyway, 10:48 is the time. Up next, we are going to talk to Dickie Arbiter, former press secretary to the late Queen. What does he make of this royal visit? Has it been a success? And can the King save the UK-US special relationship? Does it exist at all? That's up next. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a director of communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer and this is Talk. Delighted to welcome right now former press secretary to the late Queen and former royal journalist Dickie Arbiter to the show. Very good morning to you, Dickie.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, there's no doubt at all. I mean, under any stretch of the imagination, there's no way you could say that King Charles' trip with Camilla to the States has been a resounding success so far. We're on day 3, heading off to New York, but certainly in Washington, all the speeches, the banquet, the speech to Congress, standing ovation for 4 minutes before he started, about 15 minutes of rounds of applause during the speech, which made it last a lot longer than it was supposed to. Everything seems to have gone down very well. Question I'm asking our audience today, wondering what you think. Can King Charles save the special relationship with the United States?
Well, let's look at it quite practically. There is a special relationship between heads of state. There isn't currently a special relationship between heads of government. And they're two different things. Yeah. Charles and Trump got on incredibly well. I thought Charles's speech last night to Congress was a masterclass in soft diplomacy. Yeah. When he covered every subject. He covered the special relationship. He covered the fact that NATO invoked Article 5 of its charter, which meant that it stood behind the United States.
Yeah, the fact that the one and only time that it has been invoked, it was when Britain and other countries came to US's aid. Yes.
Exactly. Now, taking it on from there to last night's state dinner, he talked about Trump having said that America saved Europe when they marched into Europe. Charles did remind him that, and Trump did say that if they hadn't walked into Europe, we'd all be speaking German. Yeah. Charles did remind the Americans and the American president that if Britain hadn't walked into the United States in 1798, they'd all be speaking French.
Yeah, it was a great gag. It went down very well. I mean, that was it. The tone was very warm. Donald Trump is clearly on sort of best behaviour for Donald Trump. But there was a moment, though, where in the banquet speech where he revealed a private conversation, which is apparently a big no-no with the king, and where he talked about, we agree, Iran must never get a nuclear weapon, and the king agrees, even more than I do, which is, a weird phrase. Lots of gasps about that, like, repeating a private conversation, very much against protocol. However, I mean, to be fair, that is official British government policy, so not really something to worry about.
It's not something to worry about, but it's not something that should have been brought up at a state dinner, knowing full well that Charles constitutionally can't tread the political line and can't make political comment. But they skated over it. And if you look at it overall, the speech to Congress, the welcome yesterday, I mean, Trump was very effusive outside the White House. The speech last night.
How his mum had fancied him when he was a prince.
Yeah, it all went like clockwork, and it couldn't wish for it to be better.
And how much does this stuff matter? As you say, there are personal relationships. And again, Trump is head of state and head of government. There appeared to be quite a good personal relationship between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump, against all of our expectations, but clearly not so much anymore. He's no Winston Churchill, Donald Trump said, only a few months actually after his second state visit here. So, he does his attention span to how nice we're being to the British doesn't last very long. But how much do these personal relationships matter in terms of the soft diplomacy? I couldn't give two hoots whether Donald Trump is mates with Charles or Charles likes him or is faking it. Who cares? Does it matter for our country? This is where Charles is doing his job, exerting that soft power. How much influence could that actually have?
I think it probably has a bit of influence, because it's not just about relationships between heads of state. It's about relationships between media. We get good press in the United States. Yeah. Which rubs off on the United Kingdom.
Tourism
gives good press to the American people, and that works. It works both ways. So over and above a state visit and all this schmoozing between heads of state, it has a knock-on effect in the media. And the media are the ones that really are the guiding principles when it comes to relationships between two countries.
Yeah. Again, the impression the Americans have, but also, I was saying a bit earlier on the show, in the event, we do need America to come to our aid defence-wise. The American public and the American, the Congress, members of Congress, having a positive view of us does help in that scenario, that we are on side. There was one sort of little difficulty yesterday for the King. There wasn't there in terms of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, which of course he is dragged into this whole mess in the same way that Donald Trump is, which, Donald Trump was, yes, he had broken off his friendship with Epstein long before it emerged about him being a serial rapist and abuser, but he's in the Epstein files and everyone knows that, and there have been some questions over Donald Trump's probity behaviour over the years, undoubtedly. But the King's only dragged in by the fact that his brother has been accused of wrongdoing, currently facing criminal charges regarding evidence in the Epstein files that doesn't relate to abuse of women. However, there was a lot of pressure on him and Camilla to meet with Epstein victims yesterday. They refused. They held an alternative tea party while he was having tea with the president. There was an oblique mention to the victims of ills. There was no specific mention. Do you think they tiptoed around that, sidestepped that well enough?
They really had no choice. He did mention in that Congress speech victims of abuse, but you've got to remember the King, while head of state, he's also head of the judiciary. Yeah. He's head of the police forces. They're investigating Andrew. They're investigating him at the moment of misconduct in public duty. But it could well escalate into further investigation into sexual impropriety. So the King's in an invidious position where he is head of everything. Yeah. And he can't comment while there is an investigation ongoing.
It doesn't seem to be the case that, say, the American media, or indeed many of the British media, understand that actually that it's kind of not his place to be getting involved with that, certainly. And in terms of what they've got coming up, they've got, a memorial for 9/11 victims. Obviously, this is more about meeting with the American public. And are there any more risks? I mean, well, do you think Buckingham Palace and Number 10, the Foreign Office, be going, phew, we've got through the stuff with Trump?
I think they'll go, phew, we've got through the stuff with Trump. Today is done to mark the 25th anniversary of 9/11. Yep. Very important because there were a lot of Brits that lost their lives as well. Yep. It will meet first responders. It will meet families of victims. And then they will go up to Harlem to talk communities. But going back to yesterday, what I thought was interesting was the reference to Magna Carta. Yeah. And how the judiciary in the States have referenced Magna Carta. And Charles did say executive power are prone to checks and balances. That was a veiled threat to Trump, saying, rein in a bit because people are watching you.
That's very interesting. Dickie Arbiter, great to hear from you, former press secretary of the late Queen, Claire Pearsall. I mean, it's interesting to hear that sort of palace perspective, isn't it?
It is, because it's so very different from the political perspective that we all look at it from. Yeah. We want the King to say certain things, but it is a tightrope. It is a diplomatic tightrope.
Absolutely. To be fair, Chaz is good at this stuff.
Very good.
He is. I mean, this is literally his job.
Yes.
And he's pretty good at it.
Yeah, he is really good at it. He sets the tone right. He behaves in the correct manner. He seems to charm the President of the United States, which is something that nobody else can do.
Yeah, he literally is the only person who can do that. He is the Trump whisperer.
Absolutely.
In that. Oh God, I would love to be there for private conversations. I would love it if Charles would write a memoir. If we ever see these things and we find out what he really thinks. Trump thinks they're busy mates, but there we are. Anyway, it's coming up to the top of the hour. Lots more to talk about. Do stay tuned. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you missed the last hour, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Lots of clips there and running it live there. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about Keir Starmer dodging that probe into, what, parliamentary sleaze, lying to Parliament, which he did in that vote in Parliament last night. MPs very angry. They say they're complicit in the cover-up. Well, you didn't have to vote against it, did you? You made your choice. Live with it. You chose your mortgages being paid, didn't you? It's not going to save the Prime Minister. No one thinks that, including not offering Angie Rayner a job. Also going to be talking more about the King and his trip to the United States, and also the population explosion that we are seeing, but in all the wrong directions. Basically, we've got more people, we already know, dying than being born in this country, but we're still importing people. Well, that seems like a good idea. The UK's population is set to hit 72.5 million people by 2054. That is 40 years earlier than had previously been forecast. That's what the Office for National Statistics said. And one of the reasons we're going to be doing that is, by the way, over the next 8 years, we're going to import, on current government plans, this is what the predictions are based on, 2.2 million more people net over the next 8 years. Where are they all going to live? The government's already behind on its house building plans, for goodness sake. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Do get in touch, 0344 499 1000. Also asking whether King Charles is actually able to save the special relationship with the United States. Tell us, well, whether you think there is a special relationship or not, and whether it can be saved. Is King Charles the man to do it? Doesn't make any difference if everyone's having a little bit of bonhomie in congressional speech or at the state banquet. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Has Keir Starmer lived to fight another day, or is this basically, is he toast? Is he a dead man walking? Your thoughts on that? What do you make of the Labour MPs who are moaning, we were forced to vote to save the Prime Minister's skin? Well, I mean, no one had a gun to your head, men and women. No one had a gun to your head. You could absolutely have voted with the opposition parties to say there'd be a probe. If the Prime Minister is so sure he's done nothing wrong and he's not lied to Parliament, what's wrong with having a probe? Little investigation by a cross-party group of MPs. What would be wrong with that? If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. He's been telling us that for years when it comes to our digital ID and facial recognition and all that, hasn't he? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that, but also on the population madness that we are seeing. I just don't know where we're going to put all these people. And frankly, I would rather those people were British homegrown people. We actually made it possible for our young people to have as many children as they want and, by the way, can afford. So we had housing they can afford, good schools, jobs that were well paid, and we actually did that rather than just importing another 2 million people from the third world, which is apparently what our entire economy is now based on. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls charge the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Don't forget also we're going to get PMQs at midday. We weren't expecting that. Parliament was supposed to have been prorogued. I love that word yesterday, but it wasn't because of that vote in Parliament on the Prime Minister's line. That's what it was about. It's about 9. But Claire Pierce was very excited about that, even if you're not. Former Conservative Government advisor who chose me as always on a Wednesday. Morning. You love a bit of PMQs, don't you? Love a little bit of parliamentary intrigue?
I do, and there's lots of it going on, so it's a fun time for me.
Well, look, we've talked a lot about the royals in the last hour, so I just want to talk about this briefly in terms of the King's speech yesterday to Congress and the banquet, Trump's speeches. Read out a little bit of an excerpt what Trump had to say about, what Britain given to us, the moral courage, the background, the culture that we've given, and language, by the way, mostly. We do the correct spellings. We have a U in colour. I'm just saying, what we've done for the United States, and it was really, really warm. So in answering the question, can King Charles save the special relationship with the United States? He can definitely save it with the president, but yes. Is there a special relationship, and has he done anything to save it?
This term special relationship, I do think it is more of the Thatcher-Reagan years, and that's when...
Blair and Bush Jr.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen the likes of it really since then. I'm not sure that most people think that there is a special relationship. You see two countries working together, that's very different.
Where their interests align.
Where their interests align. So I don't think it's as important as we're all laid out.
Well, there is thing, there's Five Eyes, and people talk about security. And one of the implications, the security implications of Mandelson's appointment was this is a man who was clearly untrustworthy, who was given access not just to our most important state secrets, security, defence, economic, but also to a lot of American intelligence as well. Yeah. And goodness knows what he may or may not have done with that. I hope they're looking into it. Given the current criminal investigation he faces, I have to say this bit, he denies any wrongdoing. But at the end of the day, you've got that Five Eyes. It is interesting that it is America, Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Yeah. It's the Anglosphere. Yes, there's a reason. There is a trust. There is a cultural, link there. That not just it's not just language. It is cultural. It is values. It is rule of law. It is freedom of speech, such as we still have that. And those things do actually matter.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And it's really important that those countries stay together. At the Home Office, we did a lot of work with Five Eyes partners when we were looking at immigration and borders and things like that, because you want best practice around your own security, and you get that from those allies. Yeah. But it's the cohesion those countries have, which is why we are in together. So I think that is much more of a special relationship. I don't like the phrase necessarily special relationship. I don't think we need to have that. I think we just need to be a bit grown up.
I think we do.
And work in partnership. You don't need a special word for it,
they're the boss. Sorry, they're the big brother. I'm sorry, they're so much bigger than us.
But do you need to have a descriptor for it? I'm not sure you do.
That's fair. Okay. Well, look, I mean, one of the only moments of difficulty yesterday, a bit of protocol difficulty, was that Trump had a private conversation, he claims, with King Charles. I've got no doubt this did happen. And he says, when it comes to the issue of Iran, the Iran conflict they're currently in. Oh, it's interesting actually that Charles had talked about in Congress the need for us to back Ukraine and stand as one from the West. I mean, that went down very well in Congress. A lot of Republicans even would agree with that, questioning Donald Trump's lack of support for Ukraine and siding with Russia to all intents and purposes. But on Iran, Donald Trump claimed he'd spoken to the king. And he agrees even more than me, he says, on the way Iran shouldn't have nuclear weapons, which is interesting because you're not supposed to report a private conversation with the king, because, again, they're supposed to be above the political fray. Like, we're never supposed to know what the late Queen thought about anything or what was her view on Brexit, his conversations with Nick Clegg and the like. But it is interesting that he then, this morning, Donald Trump is up the ante when it comes to Iran. He's put a post out on his Truth Social with a picture, AI picture of it. Well, we think it's AI. Who knows? Who knows with Donald Trump? Load of explosions going off in the background. Him with an assault rifle, glasses. It looks like his SAS. No more Mr. Nice Guy, it says, with an American flag, saying Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They better get smart soon. Now, here, I mean, it's all a bit of fun. He likes doing these things. He puts out a lot of AI. White House puts out quite a lot of these sort of videos and things. But we did think there were going to be more talks. J.D. Vance wasn't going to be in these ones. He was there at the last set of 21 hours. But, his two big, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff were basically on a plane about to take off when the Iranians said, yeah, we're leaving Islamabad in Pakistan, we're going home. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. It's also then blockaded for Iranian cargo ships as well. We need those talks to happen, but is actually the threat of we are willing to go further from the Americans, is that what's going to bring the Iranians to the table in terms of the non-nuclear deal?
I don't think it is, because the Iranians have shown it doesn't matter how much pressure America in particular will put on them. They don't like to what they see as bow down to the bullies of the West. So that's how they look at it.
That's how they look at it.
I don't. I mean, I think they need to. I think they need to back well away from this. So they're not going to want to look weak. They're not going to take orders from the West, and especially from America. But I do think that behind the scenes there are conversations going on. Just because they're not in person in Islamabad, that doesn't mean that they're not happening at another
Well, there's
level.
a big issue, isn't there? We're not quite sure who we're talking to. No one's seen this new Ayatollah, by all accounts, in a coma with his leg blown off.
Yeah, we don't know how many arms or legs he's got. Is he actually still alive? Nobody's seen him. All we've seen is some words.
I think he's not. He's one of the baddies. We should kill more of them. I suggest. I don't think this is a controversial view among sane people.
I think there are many others that will take his place. Hopefully, not worse than he is.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Donald Trump has claimed that they're more rational, the ones they're dealing with now. I mean, I don't know if there is any more rational. Who
knows?
Whether they're rational or whether they're self-interested. We want people who are self-interested. We'd like to stay alive. The Israelis and the Americans have been picking them off, in one by one, in large groups at times. They will be picked off. We know the Israeli intelligence in Iran is off the scale. My favourite thing about Israel is that when the last Iranian Ayatollah set up a unit to look into the scale of Mossad agents in the country, the man running that unit was a Mossad agent.
Yes.
I mean, you've got to see the funny side.
They're pretty good at it.
And it's interesting, actually, in terms of, we go back to special relationship, we've had, again, leaked audio of one of our idiot ambassadors having unnecessarily open conversations with some school children on a visit in America, saying that there isn't a special relationship between the UK and US. It's not really a thing. It is, the only special relationship is the US and Israel. But he also was talking about Keir Starmer and that his future, this was back in February, was touch and go. It's rather more touch and go right now, isn't it? What do you make of that vote in Parliament? Now, you love this stuff. You'd have been there you'd be in the central lobby watching everybody. We had not only had that evidence from Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff. We had the former boss of the Foreign Office before the last one who got sacked. Heck of a lot of people have lost their jobs over, including Mandelson as well, over this Mandelson security vetting scandal. Prime Minister's still clinging on. I mean, those fingernails are bleeding. They are broken. He's got one left. He's definitely walking wounded. Kemi Badenoch and Davey, two party leaders, basically went for the jugular yesterday. They wanted there to be a vote in Parliament with a 3-line whip from the Prime Minister to force Labour MPs under face of losing the whip and basically no longer sitting Labour MP. And basically, you're going to have your book marked. Yeah. They got through with 15 people, the usual suspects of awkward squad, the lefties, and then another 50-odd abstained, some of whom were genuine abstentions for good reasons. But basically, a lot of Labour MPs, you were saying earlier, grumbling about they've been forced to basically, help with the, they're part of the cover-up of this. Should the Prime Minister have had a free vote and basically said, I'll have the probe, I know I haven't lied, there's no cover-up?
The one thing he should have done was actually just referred himself to the Privileges Committee, because if you do that, you take the wind out of everybody's sails. If you've got nothing to hide, then put yourself forward for the investigation.
This isn't stuff that happened in private conversations. No. We're talking about what he said on the floor of the House, the Commons, in PMQs, in answer to direct questions.
Yep.
And he's repeatedly proven to have lied. The correct process was followed at all times. I mean, literally the opposite of the correct process was followed at all times.
Yeah, and he is bang to rights. We've got all that evidence. But you either put yourself forward or you allow there to be a free vote. It should never... This is about parliamentary business.
And even Boris Johnson had a free vote. This is like votes on things like, abortion, there's the assisted suicide, votes on parliamentary probity. These things are always free votes. That is the norm.
Yes. Yeah, it absolutely
is.
They're conscience votes. This is about behaviour, so therefore it should be a free vote. It's not a party political matter. He's turned it into a party political matter. Of course, the opposition are going to use that opportunity to embarrass the Prime Minister even further. I mean, this is politics, and so Keir Starmer is so bad at it. He couldn't see this coming.
Yeah, but the thing about Keir Starmer is he's bad at everything. He doesn't do detail. He doesn't do big picture. He doesn't do leadership. He doesn't do inspirational speech, but let someone else get on with it. He doesn't do good management. He doesn't do politics. What do you do? This is the thing. But it's fascinating. These Labour MPs saying, some of them speaking to journalists, off the record, basically saying that the Prime Minister has made them complicit in a cover-up. No, you chose. At the end of the day, you've got to go with your, just with your conscience. And it's interesting, Reform, and the Tories saying the same, but Reform in particular saying, we are absolutely going to take you over, haul you over the coals of this. Every single person in your constituency is going to get a leaflet saying you allowed this to happen.
But But also, just mind that 2 Reform MPs didn't turn up and vote either. So I think
Farage wasn't there.
Well, no, neither was Robert Jenrick.
But I mean, a quarter of the MPs,
which is quite a lot, 25%.
This is the thing: if you've only got 8, there is also the argument that again, you've only got 8 MPs and you've got a massive campaign, and your future rests on local elections. You're going to be out local electioneering rather than votes of Parliament. But this is something. This is something. To be fair, I mean, again, I can see that. I think probably a tactical error.
Yes.
But this is something that Nigel Farage and Rich Tyson have always done, which is that we're out with our voters rather than wishing away in Parliament. Everyone knew how the vote was going to go. It wasn't going to be is it knife edge? Once there was a 3-line whip, the Prime Minister was going to... In which case, isn't it a waste of time?
But then you can't criticise other people for voting in a certain way if you didn't even take part in the process. And I get it.
You can, because they are.
Yeah, they are. They shouldn't. The numbers were such that the government was always going to win it. But I think that you have to be there and take part if you're elected to that house.
OK. Talking about Farage, as we found out just about 45 minutes ago in an interview with The Telegraph, Nigel Farage has revealed he was the victim of a firebombing attack at his home. This is back in early last year. This was actually it was in January. It was a petrol bomb attack on his home. He says it was an outright arson attempt. I wasn't at home at the time. When I came back and opened the door, I found the damage. Luckily, it burned itself out on the porch. We think maybe the perpetrators were disturbed in the act. The police were all over it. They did their best, but there were no suspects so far. But it's interesting that only a couple of months later, we had those attacks on the Prime Minister's car and 2 of his homes. That's actually a case. We've got 3 people charged, well, 4 people charged, but 3, their trial is at the Old Bailey this week. I haven't seen any developments on that at all, but they pleaded not guilty. There's 2 Ukrainians and a Romanian. I mean, a lot of people very intrigued by this. There's a lot of gossip about this. I would say, by the way, most of it completely in fact, all of it completely untrue. But this is the issue. Nigel Farage has said he's had a £5 million gift made in early 2024 before he re-entered politics at that year's general election. So he didn't have to be declared. It wasn't a political donation. It's about his personal safety, and that money is so he could be safe and secure, he says, for the rest of his life. He's trialled and failed for years to get funding by the Home Office for security. And the fact that he's an MP and leader of a party now, even then, before he was an MEP for many years, and he was facing death threats, had people actually running up to him. The fact that he's been attacked, he said he's had to write off a car before that was attacked. He has been with his kids in a pub and they've had to barricade themselves in. I've known him very well for years, and he has had security at all times. I mean, good God. I mean, I did an event the night we Brexited, and I was on stage with him in a Union Jack dress. Happy days, people, happy days. We had hope then. And, you know, we had ex-SAS people, you know. I mean, it was, you know, because of the security risk. No one should have to live like that in this country, including the Batley Grammar School teacher, by the way. But no one said in public eye. We get these Labour women MPs go, oh, someone shouted something at me. Oh, I need a panic button. I don't want them having people shouting at them or someone coming outside their constituency office either. But we are talking about a man who's been at the forefront of politics for decades, who has faced serious death threats, credible death threats, who has had an arson attack on his home, repeatedly been attacked with the milkshakes and all that, and the left who go, oh, someone said a naughty word, I'm so misgendered someone, they should lose their public life, they should go to prison. They find it funny, you know, the Owen Joneses of the world and everyone, they all find it funny. Joe Brand, it's all funny, isn't it? Could have been acid, not milkshake each time. It's absolutely entitled to have security guards provided by the state.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it brings into a sort of wider question as to how have we got to this state where elected representatives, whatever their view, are being abused. And there are MPs across that place who get abused for varying different reasons in different parties. And I've spoken to a number of them, especially women. And do you know what? Actually, the majority of the women I speak to are the really tough ones going, I don't want to have all of this security stuff in my house. Because this is my home and I don't want to.
But you know where a lot of them are getting it from? I mean, look, you know, again, with Nigel Farage, well, if you go around calling him quite wrongly fascist and far right and Nazi, why are you surprised when people, nutters, think that therefore it would be a good thing to attack him? But also, again, you look at a lot of the women MP, who they're getting abuse and attacks from. Trans activists, because they simply refuse to play along with that madness. Islamists Even the Home Office Minister, Jess Phillips, calling out people being harassed. Who was harassing you? It was Islamists. Yes. It was Islamist activists who you are happily supporting and saying, yeah, let's import all these people to our country. Yeah. No, live in our country, have loads of kids, bring them up as complete, extremists, and that's absolutely fine. Well, don't be surprised when they start shouting at you and following you down the street because your views on Gaza aren't quite puritanical enough for their liking. Now, I'm sorry. A lot of the left have brought this stuff on themselves.
I don't disagree with the word
I don't in any way justify them having abuse or threats. But in terms of, this is what you wanted, wasn't it? You wanted these people here, right?
You can't have it all ways. And I do think people like Nigel Farage, he's got his views. He is perfectly entitled to hold them.
Legal views.
And you shouldn't go out there, firebomb his house, look to attack him with a substance unknown. Absolutely not. You shouldn't be able to do that, and people shouldn't laugh at it either, because that just makes it worse.
Exactly. Well, I every now and then get some idle threats on social media, and I'm always like, where I work. Come here.
Come on, then. Yeah.
I've finished work. Come and have a go. We'll just see how that works out for you. I mean,
I know. A lot of it's just
it's all bravado.
They
talk very brave on their in their mum's basements, don't they?
Yes.
No, but the reality is some of these threats are very, very real. And again, I know people, and it's largely people on the right who've got panic buttons and things, but everyone, they dismiss the threats to him. But if a female Labour MP has someone shouting at them as they walk down the street, then suddenly, again, I don't think that we should do that either. But then, then we'll have a debate in Parliament about it. Now, let's also talk about this other story today, which is the latest figures from the Office for National Statistics, who just casually put these things out because, don't worry about it. We have all these predictions about, for the Office Budget Responsibilities and others about our economy and whether we're going to get growth. We're not. And how we're doing. And a lot of it is predicated on the number of people in the country. And by the way, if you actually average these stats out over the number of people in the country, we're not getting growth at all, really, because you've got more people in the country, but only a bit more wealth. And those people aren't bringing in much of that wealth because they're all low-paid, low-skilled workers. And a lot of their kids and family members don't work. You actually get poorer on average. But what a surprise. A massive 2.2 million extra migrants are going to arrive in the UK in the next 8 years. Our population is set to peak at 72.5 million by 2054. 40 years ahead when it was predicted. Because of immigration, we've got more deaths than births, and certainly the percentage of births of those who are foreign born or have more than one, usually two foreign born parents, is way higher than those who have two British born parents. This is a disaster. People think that, well, at least we're bringing in young people to work. But if they're not paying enough tax and they're not earning enough money to cover all of their costs, which the vast majority of them don't, you're just adding extra costs to the nation. We're going to go bankrupt.
We are, and we're not looking after the population that we do have. Young people aren't seeing a future in this country for them. They're looking to go overseas.
Well, you were saying your own son. I live in fear that my daughter's going to do this. Please don't go.
And of course, I'm doing the sort of nice parent thing by saying, yes, let's explore. You can do whatever you like, sweetheart, thinking, please don't do that. But he is looking at it for the opportunities that he will have, and so are his friends, and I don't blame them. People who work in the NHS, nurses in particular, are being, looked at the prospects that they have. And
I can go and get paid more in Australia or Canada. Oh, by the way, they definitely believe in the NHS, but they want to go and work in somewhere that will treat them better, somewhere else that doesn't have the NHS and has the system that I think would be better.
So we've trained them, and we've trained them very, very well, and we lose them. I don't blame them for 1 second. I think everybody needs to make their own destiny. But why are we as a country not better at looking after the people that we have?
But also young people today. I'm going to get very old. Young people today. I'm going to be 58 on Saturday, so young people today. I'm allowed to say that now. No, but they don't feel they haven't got a future. Or you've got a load of Egypts who think, the world's going to end. I don't want to bring children into the world. That's a good thing they're not bringing children into the world, because that's just lowering the gene pool and the intelligence levels of our country if they think that madness. But in terms of young people, that whole thing. So you go to a lot of them, 50%. You go to uni, you've got a massive amount of debt. The interest rates keep going up on that. You can't afford to buy anywhere. Men in particular, you lot are not settling down soon enough, boys. You're all playing the field until your mid-30s, and then you think, oh, I think I'll have a baby with a woman now. Lovely. Well, at that point, she's already going to struggle to have a baby. People have one kid, not two, because they start too late. Hello, I'm in that scenario.
So you know,
it wasn't a choice of mine. You're like, hello, will someone have a baby with me? Hello, you. Maybe that's not working on a first date. I don't know. I don't know the score anymore. But and people can't afford a home, and if they can, they've got maybe 2 bedrooms, but they can't afford a third, so they don't have a second child, or they can't afford to take off the maternity leave, and they need 2 incomes at all times to pay for everything. And it's not a lifestyle. It's not because they're paying for their 3rd car. It's because they're trying to pay the mortgage and the electricity bill and put new school shoes on their first kid. People are making, we're told, choices. A lot of it's not a choice. A lot of it is that it's too much of a struggle, it costs too much, and then we just import more people, putting more pressure on housing, on schools, on hospitals, on everything else. We need to have a situation where young people can go, I can afford to buy a home, set up a family, have 2 or 3 children that I can afford to pay for with maybe 1.5 incomes. I'll work, mum's works part-time while they're young, and we can afford a home and live in a nice area. It feels safe, and then that is the solution to our economic and our demographic problems, not importing half of Pakistan.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it frustrates me no end that this government can't get a hold of the fact that you need to grow the economy, so you need to not make it hard for employers to take people on, or entrepreneurs to open up businesses, which may then keep these young people here because they'll either set up their own businesses, go and work for somebody, and that actually they want to base their lives here.
I know, it's really
not
it is so worrying that we're in a country that's so many young people, and again, people like 30s and 40s go, I haven't got a future here. That is a really bad place to be. Really bad place. 11:28 is time. We're going to take a quick break. Want to hear from you? 0344 499 1000 on anything and everything we are talking about. After that, we're going to be talking to the wonderful Trevor Kavanagh and also Paul Morland, the UK's, frankly, leading demographer, about what these demographic changes mean. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Let's get straight to your calls, 11:31. Let's go to Andrew, who is in Hertfordshire. Andrew, you want to talk about Keir Starmer. You don't think necessarily he's saved his skin.
No, not at all. Good morning. And if you'd have asked me, I'd have had a baby with you.
Oh,
There's no
thanks,
doubt about
Andrew. That makes me feel better. Oh, that's the nicest thing someone said to me all week.
Now, look, out of the frying pan, into the fire. Whether you love or hate Boris Johnson, he referred himself to that committee. Starmer didn't. So Starmer is below Boris Johnson with his moral authority. And he can never come back from that. The reality of the Labour Party is everybody in the media is saying it's 1,500 seats. That's what they're going to lose. Imagine if they lost 2,000.
Yeah.
Then no MP is going to give up their seat to Starmer because it's apparent that actually Reform could win anywhere, or the Greens, by way of an example.
Yeah.
So he actually is has the biggest majority, and he's the weakest prime minister, and he's lost his moral authority.
And he's done it so quickly as well. And as you say, look, at the end of the day, Labour MPs they're just looking to keep their job for as long as possible. And at that point, they're going to go, we've got nothing to lose. We may as well try for someone else. Will bringing Angela Rayner back into the cabinet, will that make any difference?
No, what Angela Rayner does, and it's very interesting what she's done, is he then kills Streeting and he kills Burnham stone dead.
Yeah.
Because she's back in the game. And once she gets the red box, she's on board with the plan. They will have to run out this term because no one wants to be leader. I think, looking at the way the world is, the local elections will be so bad they'll just let him die in office and go to the next election.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Thank you for that, Andrew. Very, very, very interesting. We're going to hopefully get another call up. Anyway, I think we just lost someone on the line. But let me read you some of the messages and texts that have been coming in about King Charles, whether we can save the special relationship with the United States. James says, what's the point of a special relationship if Britain refuses to deal with Islamism and illegal immigration? Many parts of England are already lost. I mean, that's fair. Don't be fooled, says Thomas. The Foreign Office wrote Charles's speech. And James says, with a special relationship we've had nothing to do with... Well, the special relationship we have, has nothing to do with kings, prime ministers or presidents. It's between the people of our nations. We are brothers and sisters and we will continue to have that relationship regardless of the elites. Oh, hear to that. Let's go to Jeff, who's in Hastings. Jeff, you want to talk about the conversation we were just having about the immigration numbers, a massive 2.2 million former extra migrants arriving in the next 8 years alone. What do you want to say about that?
Well, Julia, good morning. Nice to meet you at last. Yeah, you put 2.2 million, and I think you said that the amount coming up would be about 70+ million in the country by then.
Well, 72 million by 2054.
Yeah, what we're forgetting, Julia, I'm sure you haven't. I'm sure you're keeping it tucked away. But just a little bit of these people that are coming in over the next 8 years are going to breed like rabbits because it's a welfare state. That's my belief.
Well, we know that migrant populations have a much higher rate of births. Simple as that.
Yes, exactly. So what will happen is our country, as you know, will become unsustainable. And I'm not sure of all the countries, like things like the Gaza Strip and places like that where there's kids on the street with poverty and old rundown shacks. That's what's going to happen to England in the next 8 years if we don't stop it, my sweetheart.
Well, I certainly think that there's a massive cultural issue. And again, you want people who are going to come, if they're going to come to this country, they should be an economic benefit to us, not just to them, or a vital skill. And they should speak the language and well, and they should be committed to our values, our culture, and not be bringing a different culture and just planting it in our country and saying, I think I'll take up home here. That's not how we want it to work.
No, that's what I'm saying, Julia. Now, it may seem, we all seem to have a little hint of bias in us, but it's not bias, it's intelligence. Look, let's look at it. As you say, if they come over from another country, I've said it before, I've spoken to Mark and Jeremy, if they come over, get their head to the grindstone, do some work, and be honest about things, it will filter down and make it easier to find all the wrong ones. And,
that's true, yeah. Jeff, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Great to hear from you. Appreciate that. 11:36 is the time. Take a quick break. Up next, former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh, get his thoughts on all the big topics. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. 11:38 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest, Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun. A very good morning to you, Trevor.
Good morning, Julia.
Lots going on in the world. I want to ask you, though, about, and the conversation we're going to have with our next guest, actually, afterwards, about these 2.2 million extra migrants expected to arrive in the UK in the next 8 years. By the way, it's going to be a lot more than that because those figures and those predictions are always wrong. But in terms of the demographics and the economic impact, just you've been writing about this stuff for decades. What do you make of that?
Well, it's wonderful news, isn't it? We're going to have lots and lots of people, but where are we going to put them in terms of housing? How are we going to look after them with our overcrowded and busy National Health Service? Where are we going to put them in terms of schooling? How are we going to accommodate the ones we've already got?
Yep.
We haven't been able to, and that's the question any government has to answer. But first of all, they have to ask the British people whether they want all these extra people, and I think that's the big issue that's coming up.
Well, no, but hold on a minute. They don't have to ask the British people. The British people have been asked repeatedly at every general election and said, no thanks. I mean, we both remember the happy, exciting days when we were promised net migration in the tens of thousands. Now we're told, don't worry, it's only going to be 250, 270,000 a year net. Don't worry your pretty little heads about it. But we are.
But they're not asking us, they're telling us. Yeah. And we're going to tell them, aren't we, at the next general election and at next week's local elections. I think this is going to be the big issue that propels reform into first place in the local elections. So,
well, Greens apparently are going to do very well.
I don't know what is.
The Greens are doing pretty well. Again, we've had government after government elected on cutting immigration. Doesn't seem to work. The Greens are doing pretty well. They want, as far as I can tell, open borders.
Yeah, but they're just mad, aren't they? I mean, but nobody's examining what they're saying. They're only thinking that they've got to give one in the eye to the two major parties. Yeah. So that's not a vote, that's just a protest.
We shall see. Right, well, look, in terms of protests, we had 15 MPs who protested against the Prime Minister yesterday, doing a three-line whip for that vote on whether or not we should have basically a parliamentary sleaze probe brought by Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, into whether or not the Prime Minister has lied about the vetting for the appointment of Mandelson as our US ambassador. Now, you know he lied. I know he lied. I think the only person who doesn't think he lied is Keir Starmer, because I think that man can legalese and talk himself into anything. But 15 MPs voted against. They were the usual suspects. Abstentions, I think a good few dozen of those would have been MPs who just weren't willing to hold their noses. But what do you make, though, of the Labour MPs who are apparently complaining that they've been forced, strong-armed by a three-line whip, to be complicit with the Prime Minister's cover-up of this scandal? Do they have a leg to stand on?
Absolutely, and I think that those 53 who abstained are in fact voting against the Prime Minister. That's the only way to interpret their reluctance to get out and support him. And I think that there are, believe it or not, some very decent, honest, law-abiding and conscience-stricken Labour MPs in Parliament, people who actually believe in public service. And they are appalled by the way this government's going and the unscrupulous nature in which Prime Minister Keir Starmer is governing.
But the vast majority of them still voted with the Prime Minister and then complained about being strong-armed into it. No one strong-armed them. They're totally able to vote for their conscience, with their conscience.
Absolutely. And I think that actually this was the time to do it. But it would have meant, wouldn't it, that we would have had a new Prime Minister, a new leader of the Labour Party, which we may all welcome in the sense
do you think that was the case? Because there was this talk that he was effectively turning this, by making it a three-line whip, into a confidence vote, that, and if you don't vote with me, if you think that if sort of the majority of the non-ministers in the Labour Party ranks, 400 odd of them, if they'd voted for there to be this probe, would that have been a point where he would have had to fall on his sword and go?
Oh, if they'd voted against him, certainly that was a vote of confidence without any doubt. And the big question that lingers over the government like a bad smell is the fact that if Starmer goes, who takes his place?
Yeah.
And there is real horror, Julia, in the Labour Party, among many Labour MPs, not just Tories and other parties, but in the Labour Party itself, that it could be Angela Rayner. And when it comes to dumping Keir Starmer and choosing a Rayner in his place, it's like filling your pants and just changing your shirt.
Beautiful
That's
image.
from one of your readers, by the way.
Thank you very much indeed. But this is the thing, Angela Rayner is very popular with party activists, very popular with the party members. Again, whoever came up with the great idea of letting the party members having the final say, guess what they vote for? Jeremy Corbyn, Angela Rayner. Do you think, though, it's quite clear that Keir Starmer is I keep asking this question of everyone, he is a dead man walking, and the only person who doesn't realise it is him. Even his aides realise it, everyone in the cabinet realises, and it's just a question of when the people who would want to take his job, when they think the time is right. And when do you think that time is going to be right for them to basically wield the sword? Is it going to be straight after the local elections?
Well, I think it's really the same problem in a different way, but it's a matter of timing in the sense of finding some dignified, in inverted commas, way out of this for the Prime Minister, who has been a total failure and a dud since the day he walked into Parliament, let alone became Prime Minister. So when do you do it? I think they really want something done and dusted by the party conference. And they're already wrangling over who's going to go first. Is it going to be Andy Burnham getting a seat in Parliament and then standing and winning the election with Angela Rayner trailing along behind as his potential successor? All of this is really fantasy until it's done. And I think that the big problem is the actual sacking. And when we get the results of next week's elections, and it is as bad as I think your caller Andrew described earlier, 2,000 seats gone. Yeah, I think that could actually cut the ground from under him.
It's going to be fascinating. I mean, again, I can't see him surviving on any of these issues. Again, even when it comes to the Mandelson probe, again, this is exploding in his face on a daily basis. Can I ask you also about the royal visit to the United States? The King seems to have gone down a storm, not just in Congress, standing ovation. His speech was lengthened by almost about half because of all the different rounds of applause he had. Good jokes at the banquet. He seems to, getting on well with Donald Trump. Question I've been asking our audience today is, can King Charles save that special relationship with the US? You followed Prime Minister after Prime Minister, especially quite a lot of these royal trips as well. We've had these state visits here and abroad. Is there a special relationship, and is he the man to save it?
I think it's quite possible this is the case. I think there is an enduring relationship between a very large proportion of the American population and this country for long-standing heritage reasons. And I think that Congress was really impressed by not just the content of the speech, which I thought was brilliantly conceived, but also the delivery. I think that King Charles was a really passionate and at times emotional speaker there. One of the things that stood out to me, though, was the commitment to increase defence spending, which so far Keir Starmer has dodged and ducked around.
He's talked a good game, but he hasn't actually done it.
Well, now he's committed to it because that's what the King has promised America. Yeah. And he needs to do it before 2030. We are in dire straits and we need a Prime Minister ready to deliver.
We needed to do it yesterday, but there we are. Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, thank you. It's always great to hear from you. Coming up, don't forget, we've got PMQs, not expected this week, but of course that vote in Parliament delayed things for the prorogation for the local elections, and of course the King's speech on May the 13th. But PMQs will be taking live, of course, at midday. It promises to be a feisty one, I think. Up next, we're going to be talking to the UK's leading demographer about why we need more Brits to be having kids rather than importing a massive 2.2 million extra migrants you expected to arrive in the UK over the next 8 years. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk more about those extraordinary figures about an extra 2.2 million extra migrants arriving in the UK in the next 8 years. This is an official projection from the Office for National Statistics, which, by the way, is going to be wrong, because it's going to be way more than that, because they're always wrong. It is always more people. But this will mean our country will be hitting a high of a population of 72.5 million people by 2054. Then we're set to carry on forwards and start falling. But this was a peak in our population that was not supposed to come until 2096, and this is not down to us all having a load of kids. This is down to us not even living longer. It's basically down to us importing people from abroad. We now have more people dying every year in this country than being born. Let's talk about all of this with Dr. Paul Morland. He's Britain's leading demographer. He's also author of the book No One Left: Why the World Needs More Children. A very good morning to you, Paul.
Morning to you.
Great to speak to you again. And it is one of those fascinating things, the number of idiots who's still going on about, oh, the world's population, we need to have fewer children, the world is going to explode. No, in virtually every country in the world, apart from Africa, and that will happen eventually, people are having fewer and fewer children. What I can't work out is, why is the world that's having fewer and fewer children, why are they all coming to us? And is that 2.2 million extra migrants vaguely accurate prediction?
Well, first of all, it is becoming a global phenomenon. It's amazing how many countries have below replacement fertility, not enough kids to sustain their population in the long term. It used to be the rich white countries of Europe, North America. Now it's countries like Chile, it's countries like Jamaica, it's countries like Thailand, most of whom have lower fertility rates than us.
But even countries like India and Bangladesh have got
they're going below replacement. Yeah. So that's a huge question for humanity as a whole. Where does it leave us? Well, we've had this problem for 50 years. And what that means is initially there's not a big problem. You don't really notice the lack of children, a small decrease in the children. There's still lots of teenagers, then lots of people in their 20s. But eventually it does feed through, and it's now feeding through into too few workers and more older people. Yeah. So we have this top-heavy demography, we have this population pyramid that's on its head effectively. And what that means is we lack workers, we lack a number of people to pay the taxes, to support the pensions, to work in the care homes, to do all the things with this larger and larger older population, which is a great thing. It's lovely people live longer.
People are living longer. This is something to celebrate.
But they haven't built that pyramid below them by having 2 or 3 children each. So we crowd in people from elsewhere, and we assume that will fix the problem, but it doesn't for a number of reasons. The first is those people will get old and the population pyramid will then be top heavy. So you have to bring people in forever and ever. The second thing is, and I think you've hinted at this, a lot of countries where we used to get our immigrants from, like Ireland and Poland, were poorer than us. People wanted to come here and they could make good money. Now the countries which have got these excess populations, which have got lots of young people, are increasingly lower and lower down the socioeconomic pecking order. So we're getting people who are culturally more different from us. We're getting people with less human capital development, less education. And so increasingly the people who are coming here, number one, many of them don't work. Number two, huge numbers of them are in social housing instead of housing for British people having British families. Yep. And number three, if you look at many of these communities over their life cycle, they never pay in. The average Somali, for example, never comes close to being a net contributor.
No, I mean, you've summed it all up, utterly brilliant. And of course, there'll be lefties who put this video out on social media going, oh, you're all being racist. No one at any point is mentioning the colour of anyone's skin. It's utterly, utterly irrelevant. However, income, skill level, the contribution in terms of the work these people are doing, and your culture, your language ability, your willingness to integrate, to assimilate, those things do all matter, and especially when we're talking about immigration on the scale we're looking at. I've seen a lot of nonsense about people saying we've always been a nation of immigrants. I mean, quite the opposite. We are not a nation of immigrants.
No, something that I've written about, and you, in fact, have also written about, is the fact that in most years since Blair came in, we've had more immigrants in a given year than we had in hundreds and hundreds of years, at least on a net basis, since the Norman Conquest.
Yeah.
So I think for immigration to be successful, it needs to have three characteristics broadly. Number one, it needs to be fairly limited in number. We can't have millions and millions coming in and hugely changing the character of the country. They won't assimilate because their communities are so large they don't need to. Number two, ideally, they should be in some way contiguous to us culturally and educationally. And number three, they have to assimilate into a country with a strong sense of itself, a strong sense of pride, and an ability to know what people are integrating into. None of those apply. And so what we're doing is we're substituting, instead of having our own children and creating our own future as a nation, which we've always done in the past, and which is a perfectly normal and natural and positive and healthy thing for a nation and a people to do and to want to do, we're assuming that other people far away will do our breeding for us, will rear their children, will educate them, and we will then pick them up and pick them off as we require them to fulfill our needs, because we're not creating a society and a community.
Quite a colonialist sort of attitude. You'd think the left wouldn't like that, wouldn't you?
A friend of mine calls it biological imperialism. I think that's exactly what it is.
Very good point. And again, and the issue, of course, is you do say we haven't got enough people in the working age population. We also, crucially, don't have enough working age people who are working. And we're constantly told we need to bring in people to work in care homes, we need to bring in people to pick fruit, bring in people to do loads of the jobs which our own homegrown working age people are refusing to do. But one of the reasons they're refusing to do it is A, they can get away with being on welfare, not working, which again we need to stop tomorrow, but also because the wages are low, and those wages are subsidised. They're good enough wages for someone who's come from a third world country, but those wages are effectively subsidised by, you know, housing benefits, social housing, and all the other freebies that people get, which I think most of us are absolutely flabbergasted that anyone is entitled to who's come from abroad.
Well, we've got to sort out a number of things to make better use of our own people in our own workforce. One of those is indeed the welfare system, which hugely incentivises people that lower down not to work at all, lower down the earnings hierarchy. And secondly, I think the whole way we educate people, it is creating a lot of university graduates with very high and unrealistic expectations. Are not very often very good educations, because our universities have dumbed down enormously, and an aversion to doing the large-scale practical work that we need. So we're welfaring people, we're educating them with expectations which are simply out of reach and educating them not very well. And then we're shipping people in, we're not having children, and then we're shipping people in, and it's having a huge effect on our country, and a bad one, I think.
I couldn't agree with every single word more. I have to say, just finally, very briefly, what we really want is our young people to have more babies, but in particular, the fact that most people would like to have had a baby if they haven't had one, or to have had two babies if they've only had one, or three if they've only two. And what can we do, just really briefly, to actually make it easier or to encourage people who want to have children to have children here?
Material things, cultural things. The material things are housing, they're childcare, they're providing all the resources to make it possible for people. The cultural things is shifting our culture from one where people value all sorts of other things to where they're actually going to prioritise having children and not think they can't do it until they've got every one of their other list on Instagram ticked.
Yeah, I mean that is the key thing. Housing, cost of housing?
Housing, childcare, and a culture that makes it the most exciting, important, and prestigious thing to do.
Which, by the way, it is. It's the greatest thing. I mean,
you speak as a parent, and I speak as a grandparent. It is indeed. We just need to get people to see that, to encourage them, to support them, and to realise that that's the way to build the future of our nation, not by shipping people in from thousands of miles away to do the work we're not prepared to do.
Dr. Paul
encouraging
Morland.
them to have the children we're not having.
Absolutely, Dr. Paul Morland. I can actually hear the cheers of our audience to every single word you have said. We need to get this man in government. Dr. Paul Morland, UK's leading demographer. You can hear why. Author of the brilliant book, No One Left, Why the World Needs More Children. Claire Pearsall.
What he said.
I mean, literally.
What can you add to that? Absolutely. Doff my cap. That was brilliant.
Because we're all bigots and fascists.
Naturally.
Oh, that's what people are going to say.
Right wing, aren't we?
I'm just going to say it's breaking news, but we're going to take PMQs live when we come back from the top of the hour. But reports on social media that 2 people have been stabbed in Golders Green, North London. This is Jewish heartland. I would say where some of my family live as well. But a man has been arrested, but 2 victims have been stabbed. This, of course, is near where those ambulances were firebombed. This has got to stop, and the government needs to stop it. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. 2 minutes past 12 is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, or your smart speaker watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Delighted to say Claire Pearsall still joins us in the studio. We've shuffled over side. So Mr. Peter Cardwell, talk presenter, can join us in the studio as well to talk about PMQs.
Very good afternoon, Julia.
Very good afternoon to you. We've got the Prime Minister's already on his feet. As soon as we get to questions, we will go live to PMQs. Kemi Badenoch will be on her feet in a couple of seconds, and we'll go across to her, in fact, right now.
Leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you. It's the end of this session, and what a contrast with the beginning, Mr. Speaker. Back in July 2024, those benches were full of sycophantic questions from adoring new MPs. Yesterday, the Prime Minister was reduced to begging those same MPs to save his own skin. Mr. Speaker, he's broken his promise to grow the economy. The only thing that's grown is the welfare bill. The only thing that's grown is the welfare bill. So can the Prime Minister tell us, how many more people are out of work and claiming universal credit since he took office?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she talks about what we've done in relation to raising people out of work. We have the youth guarantee that we put in place for young people. We've raised the national minimum wage thanks to our Chancellor. We've helped young people into work by cutting NHS waiting lists thanks to the work of the Health Secretary. We put more police on the streets thanks to the work of the Home Secretary, and we've cut energy bills for young people thanks to the work of the energy. I am very proud of what this Labour government has delivered in the first session of this Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister doesn't want to say how many more people, in fact, are out of work and claiming universal credit since he took office. Perhaps he doesn't know. So let me tell him. The number is 1.5 million people. That is the entire population of Leeds, Cardiff and Edinburgh put together. Hard-working people are being taxed more and more to pay for a ballooning benefits bill. So can the Prime Minister tell us why, on his watch, for the first time ever, we are now spending more on welfare than we earn in income tax?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the welfare system she complains of is the one they put in place, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, we are reforming it to improve it. And what did they do when we put that forward? They voted to keep the same broken welfare system.
Mr. Speaker, that answer was as honest as his reason for sacking Ollie Robbins. Perhaps he'd like to apologise for that right now. Let me tell him why we're spending more on welfare than we're earning in tax. It's because of him and his terrible policies. This is all under him. We are spending so much on welfare, we cannot afford to defend the country. And if he won't listen to me, Mr. Speaker, perhaps he'll listen to the former Labour Defence Secretary, Lord Robertson, who is saying, and I quote, "We cannot defend Britain with an ever-expanding welfare budget." I agree with Lord Robertson. Why doesn't he?
Mr. Speaker, this is the Labour government that increased defence spending, the highest sustained spend since the Cold War. What did they do, Mr. Speaker? When they came into power, defence spending was 2.5%, and when they left power, it was 2.3%. And even their own Secretary of State admitted they hollowed out our armed forces, so we'll take no lectures from them on defence.
Mr. Speaker, talking about more defence spending is not the same as giving more money for defence. He has been in office for nearly 2 years, Mr. Speaker. What he does have, he's got a welfare plan until 2031, but he's not produced a defence investment plan. We have gone backwards on defence under him because we are borrowing to pay for welfare. Yesterday, we learned that the cost of government borrowing is now the highest in 2 decades. That's under him. Instead of getting a grip on the economy, the Chancellor is briefing out rent controls to curry favour with left-wing backbenchers. This is not a serious way to run the economy. It is time the Prime Minister gives her an easier job. So will he listen to businesses, listen to the country and reshuffle the Chancellor?
Mr. Speaker, at the spring statement, the Chancellor was very proud to say inflation was down to 3% and falling, 6 interest rates in a cut. We've seen the growth figures for the early part of this year. And she says, well, the cost of borrowing's gone up. Yes, because there's a conflict in Iran. And what did she want to do? What did she want to do? When I said we wouldn't be dragged into that war because I thought through the consequences, including the economic consequences, what did she do? She said we should jump in with both feet without regard to the consequences. She can't complain now about the implications.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't hear him say he's not reshuffling the Chancellor. It sounds like she's toast. Meanwhile, the former Deputy Prime Minister is on manoeuvres. This government is like a bad episode of Game of Thrones. His own people have turned against him, and all the while, the Prime Minister is holed up in his castle, wetting himself about a visit from the King in the North. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, one Labour MP actually said that his days are numbered. That's one of them. I wonder who it was, because they're all looking guilty as hell. Isn't the real reason, Mr. Speaker, isn't the real reason the Prime Minister can't cut welfare that he squandered all his political capital saving his own skin?
Speaker, she talks about political games. That's what she was doing yesterday. This House considered our motion and rejected it decisively because everyone saw it for what it was, a desperate, baseless political stunt ahead of the May elections. And Mr. Speaker, whilst she and they were playing games here, I was chairing a meeting in Cobra, going through the contingencies and managing our war in the Middle East. Mr. Speaker, they think political games here is more important than managing the implications of the war in the Middle East, which will affect every single one of their constituents. And none of them ask any questions about it. None of them want to debate it. They just want to debate silly political stunts. Because, Mr. Speaker, even though we didn't join the war, no thanks to her, my duty is to protect the British public from the consequences, and nothing is going to distract me from what matters to the British public.
Mr. Speaker, I think the whole country is sick of this man's tone-deaf, pompous moralising. Last week, we all saw him punch the Speaker's chair. This is not a man who is in control. Since the last King's speech, it's been one disaster after another. Cronyism, jobs for friends of convicted paedophiles, peerages for other friends of convicted paedophiles, broken promises on taxes, U-turn after U-turn after U-turn. He's lost a deputy prime minister, 2 chiefs of staff, 2 cabinet secretaries, the support of his backbenchers and all his credibility. Yes. They can jeer, Mr. Speaker, they can jeer as much as they like. They're going to have to go to their constituencies and explain to all those people why they did what they did last night. The fact is the Prime Minister was reduced to whipping his MPs to save him and pleading with a tax dodger to rejoin his cabinet. How much longer do we all have to put up with his shambles?
Mr. Speaker, I changed my party and I won a general election. She's changed her party, Mr. Speaker, because when I became leader of my party, their party was 3 times the size it is now. She's changed it. It's now even smaller than when she started at leader, because half of them are up there. And, Mr. Speaker, the stunt they played yesterday, because they don't like what we're delivering. More rights at work, more security for renters, lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. That's our mandate, that's our mission, and nothing's going to hold us back.
It was 18 months ago, I remember, that my late friend Terry Etherton was sitting up there, beaming down at the Prime Minister because he had just announced the government scheme to give compensation to those who'd been wrongly sacked from the armed forces for simply being gay. But I have a constituent, Mr. Speaker, who lost his job in MI6 in the 1980s for his sexuality, and he's got no compensation. The security services also put their lives on the line for their country. It's just not fair. Would the Prime Minister find the time to sit down with my constituent and me so that we can work out together a way in which we can extend Terry's scheme so that the security services can also get justice?
Prime Minister. Can I thank her for her dedicated work on this? I am very proud of the work we've done to recognise LGBT veterans. Mr. Speaker, on top of that...
Right, we'll leave Prime Minister's questions there. As you can hear, Emily Thornberry, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, who we've seen a lot of lately, she got up to ask a question straight after the the leader of the opposition, so thought that might be relevant to some of the topics we've been talking about, but although an important topic, not so. Just say, joining me in the studio right now, Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor, and presenter Peter Caldwell, watching and listening to that. I mean, I have to say, it was a very quick, wasn't it? Very quick fire PMQs. It was like, oh, what question are we on? Have we got to question 6? We have Kemi Badenoch, I thought, very much on the front foot. In my view, I thought the Prime Minister very much on the back foot. Again, not answering pretty much any questions, Peter.
Yes, and didn't seem to know even that statistic that Kemi Badenoch was asking about in regard to the economy. He kept saying these are distractions, these are games. Well, actually, this is accountability. This is the kind of thing that every opposition
He was referring to the vote yesterday in Parliament, which he won by, normally it's a conscience vote.
He wasn't saying that. He wasn't saying that when Boris Johnson was subject to the same thing. and it's really interesting seeing some of the language around that, not really from Kemi Badenoch today, but more generally about one rule for them, one rule for the others. They're using the same language that they were using before. From Keir Starmer's perspective, this was his last chance before Parliament gets prorogued, suspended essentially, before the local elections, to set out a stall to say, this is what I've done, please vote for me at the local elections. I'm not sure he did a particularly good job today at all.
No, Claire, judging by your face, I don't think you did it either.
No, I think it was quite interesting that he gave mention to some of his cabinet colleagues. Yes. He was saying about cutting the NHS waiting list with the health secretary, looking at policing with the Home Secretary, Justice. Just sort of saying thank you. Yes. I appreciate you. So I think that's where he is at the moment. He's got to just be nice to these people because he knows that he's on really thin ice.
Kemi Badenoch brought up the idea of Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, being brought back in. That line about how this government's looking like a bad episode of Game of Thrones, and the Prime Minister's wetting himself about a visit from the King of the North, and that's Andy Burnham. But also talking about sacking Rachel Reeves. A lot of talk about that. Some reports today that Cabinet has had a disagreement about prospect of a cabinet reshuffle. Again, cabinet reshuffle is decided by the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister alone, when it's a Prime Minister who has power and credibility, which he absolutely does not. But it was very interesting with the Prime Minister. He's going to be dining out on this. Is this going to be like your dad when he's in his 90s, okay, talking about the time when, okay, and I made the right decision on the Iran war, and he got that one tiny little blip up in his points, in his opinion point poll rating, and he's going to keep going on about it forever. And he did say interesting thing. He said yesterday, he was chairing Cobra when they were doing all this voting and chat and talking about apparently unimportant things like whether or not you've lied to Parliament about whether you've allowed a man who was a clear national security risk to not be vetted properly and then appoint him to the job where he would have access to ours and our allies' secrets. I mean, yeah, of course, that's just petty stuff, isn't it, Keir Starmer? But he said at one point, he goes, I was managing our war in the Middle East. Like, oh, I thought we weren't involved in the war.
Yeah.
Our war, Claire?
Yeah, I wrote that down with a massive question mark next to it.
I got double underlining on that one.
So what on earth is that all about? And he's calling it silly political stunts. Well, no, holding you to account is not a silly political stunt.
Exactly.
That is exactly what a member of the opposition should do, and exactly what Parliament is there for. So I think he needs to back away from this. But he was very tetchy, shouty. Look over there, I'm doing great things, you're all rubbish. And that was kind of the attitude. Didn't actually answer any of the questions put to him.
One of the answers was like, well, this is the system the Tories had.
Yeah.
Mate, that's just not going to work.
No, you've been Prime Minister for 2 years. And on the reshuffle point as well, Julia, unsurprisingly, these people don't want to lose their jobs. Really weird, isn't it?
Let me write that down.
but weirdly and very, very predictably, there's all the speculation about Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner, could she come back and so on. Regarding Rachel Reeves, if you say your Chancellor is going, or if you sack your Chancellor, well, look at history. Look at what's happened. Look at Liz Truss. Look at even John Major. Look at, the question is, what have they done wrong? What did they do wrong? What plan was wrong? And also, those two roles are so inextricably linked that suddenly, when you get rid of your two chiefs of staff, you get rid of potentially your Chancellor, your Deputy Prime Minister, two Cabinet Secretaries. Suddenly people say, hold on a wee second, who was here for all of that? Who was the common denominator in all of that?
But also, crucially, this is the thing, under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, it was bizarre. Tony Blair, on occasion, when there was a budget, was not informed anything about the budget by Gordon Brown until 24 hours beforehand, but had to put up with it because Gordon Brown had this sort of, he had a lot of support within the party, and he was unsackable in that sense. But the extraordinary thing is, on the words that are written on the front of number 10. On the door is First Lord of the Treasury, okay? The Prime Minister is actually the person in charge. So if your Chancellor doesn't, you can't go, oh, the Chancellor's raised tax. The Chancellor doesn't raise taxes. The Prime Minister allows the Chancellor to raise taxes. So it's all on him. But what was really interesting, I thought, starting off, Kemi Badenoch, just extraordinary, looking at the growing welfare bill, tying it in with the lack of defence spending and saying, fair point. Say you're going to increase defence spending, but not actually doing it. Those aren't the same thing. Very good point. But the fact that it's 1.5 million more people out of work on universal credit, and by the way, don't believe this nonsense. Look, most of these people are working poor. No, they're not. They are on universal credit and they don't work, certainly once they're on universal credit, the vast majority. And if they do, it's dad in the family working part-time and no one else is working. They're not working. And basically, how are we spending more on welfare than we get back in taxes? That is unsustainable.
It's totally absurd.
This is
it's
basic
absurd.
maths.
It's absolutely absurd, and it's completely unsustainable. And also, time and time and time again, we're seeing the threats from Iran.
Yeah.
We're seeing the fact that whether we're involved with this war or not, well, we are involved, but whether it's our war or not, the point is that it's affecting us. Defence is a really, really important thing that we need to put more money into, and we need to find a way through welfare. I'm not sure. I don't think Keir Starmer wants to. I think he's put it in the too difficult box. He's seen what his backbenchers have said. We're going into a really difficult local election. Things are going to be different and almost certainly worse for him 2 weeks from today.
I mean, the options are putting up taxes. That's not politically viable anymore. More borrowing, again, not politically viable because we economically affordable.
You've got to cut other stuff.
You have to cut other stuff. And he's just not willing to cut other stuff. And neither of his backbenchers, because they're all delusional as well. And they just think if you put everyone on the payroll. I mean, these are basic universal income lunatics, a lot of these people. The trouble is, he's got a lot of, lefty Labour activists who've become Labour MPs by accident when they want a bigger...
He's become a prisoner of his own party. His majority is working against him.
It's all of that political currency that he's used up in the last 18 months.
With the U-turns and the poor decisions,
all of the
calling everyone far right.
Absolutely. So he's now, well into his overdraft and looking like he's going to default on it. So his position is so precarious at the moment. You can't borrow, you can't raise taxes. What are you going to do? He's just going to go off somewhere else on a different foreign trip after the election.
He's got himself into this position as well. They keep saying time and time again, he did it at PMQs there a few minutes ago, we've inherited this from the Tories, we've inherited this from the Tories. The biggest crisis of his time as Prime Minister is the Mandelson crisis. That was not inherited. That was entirely created by Labour within the last 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. If he had made that point, and everything we learnt yesterday, and if you get that vote in Parliament, and that was always, with a three-line whip, he was always going to win that. He is a dead man walking on that front, and again, this is such a big scandal, and this is not going away. Every time there's another police investigation, another allegation, this is never ending. Can we talk about something else that seems to be never ending? This is a breaking news story I mentioned just before the top of the hour, but we've had a stabbing in Golders Green. It's a Jewish area on Golders Green Road. This is basically the main shopping area of Golders Green, one of the main Jewish areas in North London. A suspect armed with a knife was tasered by police after stabbing two members of the public. He was seen running along the road and attempted to stab two Jewish people. We're told that two people have been stabbed. Police attended and deployed a taser. The local community security trust, this is the Jewish security organisation because they have to have one. They said they're working closely with police and they thank the police for their swift response. This comes after 3 attempted fire bombings in a matter of a few weeks, largely in North London, in a very Jewish area. This comes after the arson attack on the ambulances, again in Golders Green, very, very nearby. It comes after, of course, the Heaton synagogue stabbing. A terror attack in Manchester, where 2 people ended up dying. One at the hands of the police trying to shoot at the suspect outside the door. And have sadly hitting someone inside trying to barricade the door to keep their family members and synagogue members safe. This is now off the scale. We've had investigations, haven't we, about whether or not Iran is behind some of this. We have seen in the last couple of days the Tehran embassy putting out publicly on their Telegram channel calls for Iranians, who love their country, to basically sacrifice themselves. They're calling for suicide bombings on British territory. They're calling for suicide attacks. The ambassador's been called into the Foreign Office. Oh, good. We're going to notice this, are we? We've still got a situation where the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the SS, effectively, of Iran, are still not a prescribed organisation and banned. We don't know the motives behind this. Whether there's an international motive behind this. We have a problem with anti-Semitism in this country that's off the scale. It is growing day by day by day by day. It cannot be ignored. I'm done with police leaders and politicians, including the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary and the London Mayor, particularly, saying the right things and not doing anything about it. 2 people have been stabbed. Thank God they're alive. What if they weren't? How many times is this going to be allowed to continue?
Doing this sort of thing. We don't know the details in this particular case.
Well, and encouraging also British-born people here.
Radicalising people here. There are people in prisons being radicalised about this as well. Islamism and hatred of Jews from people who are either Islamists or not. It's become mainstream. It's become acceptable to be anti-Semitic in our society.
And applauded by the left.
There are things that people are saying, including many people who should know better, people on Twitter and celebrities, are saying that if they said the same thing about black people, about gay people, about trans people, about Muslims, they would be absolutely pilloried for it.
And they'd be shunned, they'd lose their careers, they'd probably be arrested, but you know.
And these people who fail to utterly condemn this and say exactly what it is, which is hatred of people because they're Jewish, they're providing, it's like a fish tank, they're providing the water for these terrorists and for these attackers to swim in. That's what they're doing.
Absolutely. And Claire, I mean, this is the thing, a lot of people, they'll often say, well, it's about Gaza, it's about what's going, it's a Palestinian cause, it's about, they're anti-Zionist, not anti-Semitic. Well, you know what? If you go around basically completely and utterly vilifying the only Jewish nation state in the world, and you obsess about that as opposed to all the horrific terrorism that happens under Islam, about all the horrific dictators around the world, whether it's Putin or Xi Jinping or you know when it was Assad in Syria, whether it's the Iranians, whether it's with the Palestinian leaders, when you vilify Israel alone, when you make up blatant lies about killing babies, deliberately targeting babies in Gaza, about mass starvation. Again, lies, all this stuff, absolutely untrue. And when the BBC reports Hamas lies as facts for 3 years, telling us that Israel is uniquely an evil country and their military uniquely evil, you can't be surprised when people think it's justifiable to attack the people who they regard as somehow representative of that nation state and those people.
And I'd like to put it back to those people, the keffiyeh wearing, Palestine flag waving people that we see on these marches. Do you think it's acceptable for 2 people to be walking down the street in daylight to be stabbed?
Yes, they do. No, they do. A lot of them do.
What I find concerning is that they have no care for anybody else. They are the be kind generation. Apart from.
Aren't they just?
And I think the Jewish community having to fund their own support, security, having to look after schools and synagogues because of those idiots.
People in stab vests outside synagogues and schools.
I find this abominating. I can't tell you how angry I get when I hear these people harping on, but they don't care about Jewish people going about their daily lives being threatened.
But there's somehow, I mean, again, it's this idea that's like, you know, I'm you know, you're Irish, Peter, you know, I'm half Irish. I don't know that side of my family history very well, but so you know, no one's blaming me for things the IRA has done.
No, you're Jewish in this country, therefore you're entirely responsible for everything, single thing that Benjamin Netanyahu has done. I would like to say to those people, okay, you, Julia Hartley-Brewer, you're from the UK. Obviously, you're entirely responsible for everything that Keir Starmer does.
Yeah.
Doesn't stack up. It's nonsense, it's reductive, it's absurd, and it is wrong.
But it's done not just by idiot Islamists wearing their keffiyehs. It's done by the left. It's done by academics in universities. It's done by the BBC every single day, and by, you know, very senior reporters and correspondents who should know a hell of a lot better. Who, I mean, genuinely, I think it's virtually criminal what they're doing in terms of the disinformation they're putting out. And it's done by MPs. It's done by so many in the political world. I mean, what we see with the Green Party. I mean, but no, you can't have a go at Zach Polanski because he's Jewish, so it's okay. He's allowed to have a party full of people who have celebrated October the 7th. We've still got, you know, the Owen Joneses and people like that who think they're nice people. Try not to talk about him because he's so irrelevant. But people who still don't think that you know, that women were mass raped and brutalised on October the 7th, despite all the evidence.
I did a debate with an academic on a different station who tried to argue to me that rape was not used as a weapon of war and said there was no proof that happened on the 7th of October. It is demonstrably true. There are many, and they'll just deny all this stuff till they're blue in the face. The fact is, we know the facts, we know what's happening, and it has to stop.
Well, it's one of the things we try and do on this station is to make sure people are armed with the full facts. But again, the people who will wring their hands publicly today, the politicians,
thoughts and prayers, lessons will be learned,
and all of that. But all of those people, they've got blood on their hands because they have created a culture where this, to some people, becomes a reasonable and acceptable thing to do because of their cause is so justifiable, and what Israel and what Jews, by association, are doing is so evil and awful. Therefore, it must justify what they're doing. It's the same reason we were talking earlier about Nigel Farage revealing that he's been the victim of a firebombing attack and everything. Again, if you call someone a fascist, if you call someone Hitler, you call someone evil, if you make up lies about people, then people will think it's okay. And it's always the people on the left who can, other than with Donald Trump, who's been an awful person when it comes to some of the language he's spoken about, journalists included. But you know, these people, they talk the talk and then they go, oh, nothing to do with me, Gov. Everything to do with you. Everything to do with you.
And they'll see the Farage news about the firebombing, they'll shrug their shoulders and say, well, that's the price you pay. It is hypocrisy, it is dreadful, it is totally wrong. And if they have any moral courage whatsoever, they need to come out right now and condemn all of this.
Absolutely. But not because to do something about it. Here's the thing. Let's stop importing people from countries where anti-Semitism is the norm. Maybe that would be good. Let's stop having hate preachers coming to mosques and stuff online where you're basically normalising this of thinking about of Jewish people as somehow both ruling the world but also being subnormal. Why do we not have people on the streets of London every fortnight on a Saturday freely walking through our city with the most outrageous anti-Semitic banners and charts calling for the annihilation of the only Jewish state in the world, from the river to the sea, globalise the Intifada? That's what it means. Globalise the Intifada means kill Jews everywhere. That's what it means. And if our London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, in his infinite wisdom and belief in diversity, thinks that's the sort of diverse view that it's okay to have on the streets of London and the police don't get involved, don't be shocked, and don't you bloody dare claim to be shocked or upset or care about Jewish people being stabbed on the streets of our capital city in broad daylight. This is on you. Going to go to a break. 12:31 is the time. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for X's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'm going to calm myself down now, but I would say this Golders Green stabbing, 2 men stabbed, Jewish men, it would appear, in Golders Green, man arrested, tasered by police. But again, we just cannot go on like this. It's enough. We've got a statement from Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary of the Tories. He said this is yet another appalling anti-Semitic attack. The Jewish community are not being properly protected from this hate. We've seen Iran sponsoring anti-Semitic attacks and Islamist extremism run rampant. The government must urgently step up tangible actions against anti-Semitism, Iran and Islamist extremism. Exactly, tangible. No more words. No more words. Let's go to Susie, who's on the line. 0344 499 1000 is the number she's called in to have her say on this. But Susie, I mean, this is well, okay, is it a shocking attack? I don't think I am shocked. I think we're waiting for this to happen, weren't we?
Absolutely. And you can set your clock that today, at some point, the supposed leader of this country is going to make an announcement saying he's shocked and appalled. Yeah. And yet, while he shakes hands with actual terrorists and invites them into Downing Street, there shouldn't be a single member of the public that is shocked and surprised.
Who are you talking about?
Hatred. Keir Starmer.
No, but who are you talking about in terms of the terrorists you say he's invited into Parliament?
Oh, the leader of Syria.
Oh, yeah.
Mahmoud Abbas. The way that he was inappropriately groped at the iftar event by Zumlot. I mean, it's horrendous that we've got a leader that does all of this type of stuff. He said that he's going to ban the IRGC, but it says nothing about the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, exactly, which is banned in most Arab states because it's an Islamist organisation. But again, also we've got, Zach Polanski again. Oh, he's Jewish because leader of the Green Party, but he's Jewish, so he can't be anti-Semitic. But his condemnation of Israel, his schmoozing up to and lies about Israel, is schmoozing up to the Islamist fanatics in his party. And I mean, I just see councillor after councillor who's standing in elections, who has openly, publicly and proudly praised the October the 7th attacks. I mean, these people forget their party. They have no business being in public life if they are praising a massacre.
Julia, there's a joke. I say joke sarcastically, but there's a joke amongst Jewish people that those that start a sentence with "as a Jew" is actually not fighting or talking on behalf of the Jewish people at all.
Of course not.
As a Jew, Israel doesn't have the right to exist.
Yeah.
Really? What other country are you questioning its existence?
Yeah, France doesn't have a right to exist. Syria, I mean, no country has a right. No, but it does, and it does exist, and that's the end of the matter. I just find the people who are obsessed on that issue, again, remarkably unconcerned about kids starving in Sudan. Remarkably unconcerned. It's quite bizarre. Don't care about them at all. Susie, thank you for that call. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking to a former British diplomat, Edmund Fitton Brown, about what he makes of our special relationship with America. We're also going to be taking more of your calls, including the fabulous, the wonderful, she's been waiting on the line, Georgina in London. That's all coming up. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:39 is the time. Coming up, we're going to be hearing from Gideon Falter from the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism. We're also going to be taking your calls. First up, though, let's turn our attention back to what happened stateside yesterday. We're on the third day of the royal visit by the King and the Queen to the United States. They've moved to New York today to attend an event to mark the 25th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center. But yesterday, certainly, well, no doubt at all, the King was an absolute hit, not just with Donald Trump, with Congress, but also at that state banquet at the White House and indeed with the American public, it would seem. But can he help save the special relationship with the United States? Do we even have one? Well, let's put that to my next guest. Delighted to say he's joined us in the studio, Edmund Fitton-Brown. He's a former British diplomat. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jim.
First of all, I suppose do we have a special relationship with the US? Because one of your folk, the current American ambassador, this is Christian Turner, our UK ambassador to the US. He, in some leaked audio, February, told some school children that not only that Keir Starmer's future was touch and go, but also that there wasn't a special relationship, and the only special relationship the US has is actually with Israel. Is that true?
Well, I was a bit surprised by that, and I wonder if he really meant it. If he did mean it, I think he was wrong. I think there is a special relationship still. I think the King's visit shows it very clearly, and the King, of course, shows that sort of gravitas and charisma that very few politicians have. It's a reminder of how effective the royal family can be on these occasions. But the main thing I want to mention really is that the UK and the US are still extremely close on all national security issues.
That's crucial, isn't it? A lot of this stuff goes on behind the scenes. You know, France and Germany, yes, nice big economies and things, but you know, but we are in the Five Eyes group of Anglophile nations, basically.
Exactly so, and that relationship specifically between the UK and the US is the closest of all. It's almost unthinkable that the UK and the US would ever decouple from that. So the special relationship is underpinned.
And how much of that is down to personal relationships? Because there's a lot of talk about, Mandelson was appointed as ambassador to the US because he, being the EU trade commissioner, and a trade deal was very crucial after Brexit, but also that, he knew how to spread that stardust and inveigle himself with people. But we've seen, the relationship between Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, then the relationship between Tony Blair and George W. Bush. How important are those personal relationships, whether it's between heads of government or heads of state?
I think each time that you have a special personal bond like the ones that you referred to, it helps. It adds to the sense.
Is it picking up the phone and being able to say, hey, look?
Yeah. It is. It's being able to have frank conversations and being able to take difficult decisions together. I think that in spite of that, the special relationship, because it's grounded in agreements that go back to just after the Second World War, because it's institutionalised, I think it will survive if there is a period where the President and the Prime Minister are not particularly close.
It's stronger than that.
It is stronger than that, but it is a reminder that every time the royal family gets involved, it reminds you that it is working and that the Americans love the royal family.
Yeah, and as we were saying earlier, it's actually rather useful, not just that Donald Trump likes the royal family and we can use that soft power, especially when things are a bit tetchy with Keir Starmer. And I think we're all pretty surprised that Keir Starmer has developed somehow this rather good relationship with Donald Trump. And I can't think of two men who are less alike, not just politically, but even just personality-wise. But that actually there is this bond that goes far deeper than all of this. And it seems like, the language, the culture, and this was something, some beautiful words that Donald Trump had to say at the actual first greeting in the White House yesterday, where he's talking about, the moral courage of the people who came from Britain, came to America, and the values and the culture. There's so much there that is very similar. And there's that wonderful quip from the King yesterday at the state banquet about how a lot of talk about if the Americans hadn't come to our aid, then we would be speaking German. And he pointed out, but if it wasn't for us, you lot would be speaking French. It's a great gag. Come on.
Yes, it is a really good gag. And I think, there's something about the gravitas of royal occasions that brings the best out of these kind of contacts. Even President Trump, who is sort of famously informal and obviously says things that can be very difficult.
And reports private conversations.
Yes, all of that. But somehow or other, I think he rises to the occasion. I think we should be fair. I think you were being fair to Keir Starmer. He has not done a bad job in the relationship with Donald Trump. The fact is that for all foreign partners of the United States, the Trump presidency is challenging.
Yeah. And there's no doubt at all other members of the royal family being, used for. Prince Andrew had this role, did he not, as a trade envoy for a very long time, and now there's sort of some criminal investigations in relation to his work there and links with Jeffrey Epstein. Of course, he's denied any wrongdoing. But the royal family, how useful are they in terms of, are there conversations that go on? Bearing in mind, you're a diplomat, and diplomats work for foreigners, but it's part of the government. You're part of the government machine, but also part of, the civil service. But having links with the royals, because you're His Majesty's representative, aren't you? At the head of state level rather than the head of government level. How much are there free and open conversations where people say, right, we're gonna have to get the king, or we're gonna have to get Prince William, or no, this is one for Kate, she's the one that they'll like. How open are those conversations within government?
They can be very open, and I would say that the government does a pretty good job of figuring out where the royal family is going to add most value, and it tends to be where there are personal relationships. So you see it with the US. But you also see it where I used to do most of my work, which was in the Arabian Peninsula, where the relations between individual members of the British royal family and some of the Gulf royals were very close indeed. And you could see that British royals could broach things with Gulf royals that British politicians or diplomats found difficult.
And they would take it seriously. I've always been rather troubled by those close relations, because I think a lot of it is in relation to money.
Well, there's an element of that.
I don't like that.
Well, and of course, I don't want to suggest it's without its difficulties, because, as you said, Prince Andrew was part of that whole setup as well. But what you do get to do is to raise difficult issues, which are then managed as being between friends. Whereas an ambassador who goes up to a foreign minister or a king and makes a point is really running the risk of giving offence, and will often mince words.
Yeah, so the royals, or they will be sent to right. Here's what you've got to say. And again, the speech to Congress, and include the speech at the state banquet, these will have all been agreed with number 10 in advance. That he's speaking in the same way that when we have the state opening of Parliament, these are the words of the Prime Minister, not the King.
That's true. But what I do love about the way the King operates, and I think this was also true of the Queen, is that all of this is agreed in advance. But the King has such a strong sort of BS detector. And so he's not going to accept something that's going to sound like weasel words or something empty.
What did you make of the calls for the King and the Queen? And to be fair, Queen Camilla, she's been very open about violence against women and wanting to tackle that. And I think a very, very genuine cause for her. What do you make of him being asked to meet with Jeffrey Epstein's victims, and given the link with his brother for the accusations from Virginia Giuffre and the pay? I mean, bearing in mind the King paid £1.5 million, we understand, towards the payoff for Virginia Giuffre in that civil suit on behalf of his brother. The late Queen paid the most of it. What do you make of the decision not to meet with them, but also to give very oblique mention about victims of the many ills in society? I mean, we're told by the palace that was the reference to the Epstein victims. I mean, that was tenuous at best, wasn't it?
Well, there just is no easy answer on this. You're talking about probably the most politically and also from the point of view of the victims, personally sensitive issue that you could imagine. And to handle that on a state visit isn't straightforward. I think it was actually done quite elegantly.
With danger.
And I think that to have done it in any more depth would have been, as you said, fraught with danger.
Very interesting. I'm Claire Pissell, listening to all of that with us in the studio. What do you make of what Edmund's had to say?
Yeah, I think it's always really interesting when you see diplomats at work and you see how essential they are to the process, which is why Peter Mandelson was never going to be that person in the US. He doesn't have that way about him, that quiet confidence to not leak conversations and actually just go about these things in the background. That's the most important part of it.
That's the whole point. It is, and not maybe if you're a current ambassador having conversations with the school children and saying stuff you shouldn't about the Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
You would never have done that, Edmund, would you?
I would not, no. I was surprised by that.
So that was wonderful. That was diplomatic speech for what the hell has he done? That's what he meant. That's what he meant. Edmund Fisher-Brown, so good to have you coming again. Former British diplomat. Thank you very much, Dean. By the way, just as we were talking about earlier, this double stabbing in North London, in Golders Green, Jewish area, 2 Jewish men have been stabbed. A suspect has been tasered and arrested by the police running along Golders Green Road. It's basically the local shopping street in the very Jewish area of Golders Green. And as we were all predicting, Susie, our caller from Hertfordshire, is Jewish herself, saying, you know, she's not shocked at all. It's not shocking, but the Prime Minister, you know, is going to issue a statement saying he's shocked. He has. He has. Well, speaking in the Commons just now, obviously word's gone to him. He says he's called the stabbing in Golders Green deeply concerning. He says there is now a police investigation. I think we all need to do everything we can to support that investigation and be absolutely clear in our determination to deal with any of these offences, the likes of which we have seen too much recently. Oh, well, to be fair, he didn't say he was shocked. Maybe he was predicting it, as we all were. But, I mean, we all need to do everything we can to support that investigation and stop the... I mean, what we need to do is not have Jewish people stabbed on the streets of our capital city simply because they're Jewish. That is what we need to do, Prime Minister. Up next, we're going to be talking to the Chief Executive of the campaign against anti-Semitism, Gideon Falter, and we'll take your calls as well. This is Talk.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a director of communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall still with me. Obviously, we want to be reacting more to that double stabbing. 2 Jewish men stabbed in Golders Green in North London. This is very near where, of course, we had that ambulance attack, the arson attack on the Jewish community ambulances. We've had a spate of arson attempts on 3 different Jewish premises, synagogues and the like. And, of course, this comes after, the deaths at Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester last year as well. I mean, Prime Minister says the stabbing is deeply concerning. Well, do something about it then, would be my response. Let's talk right now to Gideon Falter. He's Chief Executive at the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, has joined us on the line. Gideon, I mean, as we were just saying, no one should be shocked by this. It was a matter of time, wasn't it?
Look, we don't know exactly what's happened here, but I've just been speaking with victims and also the people from Shomrim, London. It's a Jewish volunteer-led neighbourhood watch scheme. They were first on scene. They were able to immobilise and detain this attacker. What I'm hearing from Jewish people who were in the area was that they were walking along. someone shouted, "He has a knife." They looked around and saw a man who was walking towards a bus stop. He broke into a run and then started stabbing people at random. And we now believe that 2 Jewish people have been stabbed. We don't have confirmation that they are Jewish. We don't have confirmation on the nature of their injuries. They were actually treated pretty much immediately at the scene by Hatzolah, which is the Jewish volunteer-led ambulance service, which had its ambulances burned down just a few weeks ago.
We remind everybody, it's not just for Jewish people, it's anyone in the local community. I've got family who live around there and have done for many, many years. But this is the thing, and it's interesting, each time you're talking about it's local community. Again, these are organised, charitable groups often, and they're needed because of the risk. And there's no doubt at all there's been a stepping up of security in particularly in North London, which is so many parts of North London where we've got a strong Jewish community. So I know that area well. I've walked up and down that road myself. Got family members who use the shops in that road. It is, this is a real concern. It's open air, it's broad daylight, sunny day, and people are fearing for their safety. It's just a miracle that someone wasn't killed. And a man is in custody. But when you hear the Prime Minister saying it's deeply concerning and saying we all need to do everything we can do to support that investigation, that's what he said in the Commons, be absolutely clear in our determination to deal with any of these offences. We've clearly seen too much of them recently. Look, this is happening again and again and again. What action is being taken by the government? Because I don't see anything.
We've heard for years now, not just from this government, but from previous governments at all, these pathetic political statements about being deeply concerned, about being alarmed, about being shocked, how we must not be divided. It is enough of all of these absolutely pathetic political platitudes which make no difference whatsoever. We need action, and we need it urgently. It is an absolute outrage that makes Britain a laughing stock and endangers people on our streets, that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is still not proscribed in the United Kingdom, something that the government promised to do. How many more incidents do we need to learn about and read the gruesome details of before something is actually done?
But also,
it's not just become a laughing stock. Britain is increasingly becoming a place where Jews justifiably feel unsafe.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, there's so many people, and I know so many Jews who are talking about moving to Israel, to a war zone, and thinking and believing, probably rightly, that they're safer there. But even with the Tehran embassy, the Iranian embassy, putting out a public message on Telegram calling effectively for suicide bombers in this country. And we know perfectly well who they hate the West generally, but, they hate little Satan, big Satan, America, Britain, Israel. But they particularly hate Israelis, particularly hate Jews. And we've had that, you and I talked about this many times, that conflagration between when we have whenever we have conversations about Israel, and people seem to somehow conflate that with anyone who is Jewish or anyone who supports the right of Israel to exist. In the same way, I support the right of France to exist, for goodness sake. But actually, a lot of this is being perpetrated by politicians, by high-profile celebrities, by our media, by the BBC. They should never be surprised that their language and their vilification of the only Jewish, country in the world, homeland, it should lead to this, should they? No one should be shocked.
Look, the amount of incitement going on in the UK is absolutely outrageous. From the beginning, from October the 7th, when these Hamas attacks started and everything that's unfolded since, we've just seen week after week our streets transformed, and people keep saying, well, they're peaceful marches, no one's getting hurt. The incitement is insane. It is off the charts. And what it is doing is radicalizing Britain. This country that has been tolerant and decent for all of our lifetimes is becoming a place where, if you ask young people what they think, is absolutely blood-curdling. They think that Zionists, and we know who they mean by that, are subverting British democracy, are in control of our politics, and are a uniquely malign, genocidal, baby-killing influence on the world. And because of that, these sorts of attacks, we hear from people, are being described not as disgusting attacks on Britain, but as justifiable revenge. It is absolutely horrifying. And we need to get away from treating each of these incidents as though it's a separate thing. You were reading out earlier a politician saying that we need to cooperate with the police inquiry.
No, that was the Prime Minister.
Prime Minister saying we need to cooperate with the police. Absolutely right. Yeah. But also, does he not think it's time for us to take a slightly more holistic approach and ask how it is that people in